Welcome to the woods. We are broadcasting live from Finnish Nature Center Haltia. Dear Prime Minister, dear President of the European Commission, dear Prime Ministers, dear Commissioner and dear Ministers and dear audience, welcome. On this early and chilly winter's day and morning, we will actually be continuing from where the climate COP last weekend left under Egypt's hot sun. That is, how can we prevent a dangerous climate disaster? How can we mitigate greenhouse gas emissions? Today, we will have a specific focus. That is the topic and the role of forests, wood, construction and architecture. And the common framework for this approach is, of course, the new European Bauhaus, the cultural initiative and inspiration that's been the topic in the architectural and design circles for a couple of years already now. My name is Matti Kuittinen. I come from the Ministry of the Environment of Finland and I will be moderating the event today. And I am the coordinator of the Nordic Bauhaus program here in Finland. Today, we will first have a high-level event in the beginning, which will take about 2 hours. Then there will be a break, and then thereafter we will go into separate panel discussions and end the day in a summary and networking event. And there's also a possibility for discussions today online, and I will get back to that a bit later. But now, let's start the event with our first speaker. It's a great pleasure to welcome the Prime Minister of Finland, Sanna Marin. Prime Minister, please, welcome to the woods.
Thank you so much, dear friends, President of the Commission, dear Ursula, Prime Minister Kallas, dear Kaja, Deputy Prime Minister Ebba Busch, dear participants. You're mostly welcome into the woods, to the Finnish Nature Center Haltia and to this conference. Today is all about focusing our minds on forests, wood-based materials and sustainability. The built environment is a key position in our work to achieve carbon neutrality. It generates 1/3 of all emissions, both in Finland and globally. According to the IPCC, we should cut these emissions by 80% by 2050. This is a big challenge. However, there are several ways to reduce emissions from the built environment. We have already taken many steps when it comes to energy efficiency. Next, we need to take steps towards material efficiency. On our current path, the production of cement, steel, aluminium and plastics is set to generate almost twice the amount of emissions we can allow by 2050 if we want to limit global warming in 1.5 degrees. That is why we must also find alternatives to emission-intensive materials in the construction sector. As we all know, wood and bio-based materials can offer great opportunities for decarbonizing our building stock. We need to move towards a green bioeconomy in all sectors, and construction is no exception. That said, we must maintain a careful balance in our forests. We must not harvest too much. We must not sacrifice biodiversity. And we must take good care of forest ecosystems so that these carbon sinks can continue to play their vital role in our carbon neutrality goals. Finland is aiming for carbon neutrality by 2035. To ensure this, we have invited different sectors in our society to develop their own roadmaps towards these goals. We expect every sector to bring its solutions and commitments to the joint effort. In our government, we have also turned attention to the climate impact of the built environment. We have speeded up the development of policy on climate declaration for buildings. If we want to steer the climate impact of the built environment, we first need to know what they are. We cannot manage something we cannot measure. Wood construction plays an essential role in decarbonizing our construction sector. The government has wood construction program that supports the construction sector in finding new ways of building with wood. This program has done remarkable work to promote low-carbon solutions and strengthen international collaboration in this field. Buildings are also important for the economy and our well-being. Around 80% of our national wealth is in the built environment, and we spend over 90% of our time indoors. We must solve the environmental challenges of construction while maintaining its role in the economy and ensuring healthy and comfortable conditions in buildings. We also have to balance different aims when regulating the use of forests. It is clear that forest policy as such belongs to the EU member states. At the same time, the EU climate, environment and energy policies have direct effects on forest and forestry. When we set goals at the EU or global level that have an impact on forests, we should remember that forests and conditions are different in different countries and in different parts of Europe. We should also bear in mind that 60% of forests in Finland are owned by private citizens. Finland is committed to the goals we set together in the EU or global level, but it should be left to decision makers at the national and local level to find and use the best possible methods for implementation. Another key element related to the future use of forests is predictability. This is especially important when we discuss multiple proposals affecting the use of forests. A constant source of renewable material, at the same time, forest owners and the forest industry plan to execute their investments over a time frame of decades. As such, we must avoid constantly reviewing and changing the regulations that affect them. This would weaken Europe's global position as a place for innovative industry that develops sustainable ways of production. Complex problems require new solutions. We need creativity and innovation. We need to bring in creative potential of architecture and design. And we need cross-disciplinary collaboration and new skills. In this context, another issue we should pay attention is the impact of climate change and environmental challenges of our well-being. Young people in particular are legitimately concerned about the state of our planet. We know that levels of environmental anxiety and depression are increasing. We need to act on these challenges. Arts and culture can offer channels for addressing this. Spending time in the forest can inspire design and architecture, but also promotes mental and physical well-being. Sustainable architecture can help us develop better solutions for the global crises we are facing. All of this is embodied in the new European Bauhaus initiative, which Finland is actively participating with our Nordic neighbors. Today's event is a prime example of this collaboration. I want to thank you, dear Ursula, for this initiative, and I'm glad to announce our participation with the development of digital learning materials for wood construction. Today, we will discuss the role of forests, construction, and architecture from the viewpoint of building a carbon-neutral Europe. I encourage you to take a visionary view and imagine the solutions for tomorrow. I'm convinced that together we can make them a reality. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Sanna Marin. Our next speaker has actually initiated the entire new European Bauhaus movement. She is none less than Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission. President, it's a great honor to invite you to the podium, please.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Marin, dear Sanna, Prime Minister Kallas, dear Kaya, Deputy Prime Minister Bush, distinguished guests and dear friends, it's a pleasure to be here with you. Indeed, we are a relatively short drive from Helsinki, and we are in the heart of nature. And I could not think of a better place than this one to discuss the importance of forests. We are learning more every day about the immense role these rich and complex ecologic systems play for the health of people, but of course also for the health of our planet. Europe's 400 billion trees absorb almost 9% of our continent's greenhouse gas emissions. For example, by retaining water, they help to prevent floods and droughts. And they are even stabilizing rainfall patterns by shaping the clouds we see in the sky. So forests are livelihoods, they are energy, building materials, and of course, they are economic growth and many, many important jobs. New innovative products are being developed. Wood-based products have an enormous potential to replace fossil-based products. And I'm very much looking forward to learn more about all this today at this conference. So let's have a look at the forests. For thousands of years, forests have been for us an enchanted place of mystery and magic, as well as modern science. In our oldest fairy tales and folk tales, forests are the home, and you know it all, of spirits, of wise animals, of wizards, of healers. Today, more than 25% of our medicines still originate in rainforest plants. Forests are, in the widest sense of the word, part of who we are. And they must be our shared responsibility, because we all know that today our forests globally are in danger. Near my hometown in Hanover, that's the northern part of Germany, there is a forest that I have known since decades. And whenever I come home, I take a walk in this forest. And in the recent years, I've seen this forest withering. Pests are thriving. In our warming climate, you know all the signs of this development. Also here in the north, forests are changing with the climate. This summer, wildfires in the European Union released an amount of carbon that is equivalent to the annual emission of around 5 million cars, annual emission. We know that scientists are debating whether forests in Europe are carbon sinks or rather net carbon emitters. Whatever the outcome of this debate is, there's certainly one point we can all agree on. Healthy forests are our strongest allies to fight for a healthy planet. And we need to do more to save and better manage our forests. And this is what brings us here today to this conference. Let me begin with the global picture. In the last 3 decades, an area that is larger than the whole European Union has been lost to deforestation. And we all have a responsibility in this. Consumption in the European Union, for example, is said to be responsible for about 10% of these losses. But now with the European Green Deal, we have decided not only to address the problem, but to be part of the solution. A regulation on deforestation-free products, for example, is set to be adopted next month, just in time before the COP15 in Montreal. Our message is very clear. Europe is cleaning up its supply chains for products that trigger deforestation. And this marks a turning point in the global fight against deforestation, because the regulation addresses not only the illegal deforestation, but all forms of deforestation that cuts down trees without replanting them. Soon, only products that are not based on deforestation will be allowed to our single market. But we also know that the solution cannot only be a simple ban, because forests are an important economic and also cultural factor. So we need to give an alternative to deforestation to those local communities who depend so much on forests for their livelihoods. Like, for example, creating new jobs, sharing know-how in conservation of forests, supporting new supply chains for sustainably sourced timber. Last year in Glasgow, I signed for the European Union a €1 billion global forest pledge. That was the pledge. And this year, at COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, I could sign 5 forest partnerships with 5 different countries to put this pledge in action. And it's exactly what we are working on, to make sure that there's an alternative to deforestation for these communities. Just to give you an example, for example, wood processing in Guyana, or forest products like honey in Uganda, or sustainable tourism in the Republic of Congo. So not only ban the deforestation or fight the deforestation, but really create viable alternatives. The local communities can thus make a living by protecting and by respecting their forests. This is how we address the global challenge of deforestation, through closer cooperation and giving people a sustainable alternative that is good for them and good for the planet. Now, here in Europe, we have decades of experience in sustainable forestry. For example, you here in Finland, forest resource data has been regularly collected since the 1920s already. So with this knowledge together, we can build on your experience and take it to the next level. And this is my second point. Let us join forces to nurture our forest biodiversity and bioeconomy. Let us shift the incentives from short-lived uses of natural resources to long-lived and circular ones. And this is the aim of the European Land Use Revision. The final missing link is a proposal for certification of carbon removal. It is a quality guarantee to people and organizations who want to fund carbon removal activities. So not only can we then better monitor that our forests remain carbon sinks, but foresters and forest owners will be recognized and rewarded for the time and the care they invest to keep our forests healthy. And as you said, Sanna, I think it was 60% of the forest here in Finland is owned by private people. So let's reward them for the care they are giving and the nurturing they are providing to their forests. These measures help ensure that timber is sustainably harvested, not just in your countries here, but also across the European Union. So this covers the supply side of the equation. On the demand side, we need to do more to promote the use of long-lived biomaterials like quality wood for construction. And this is indeed where the new European Bauhaus comes into play. We want to improve people's lives by designing and building sustainably. And to see what I mean, you just have to look around into this building, the Finnish Nature Center, a cross-laminated timber building we're in here. When it was built in 2013, it was the first of its kind in Northern Europe. Today, if you look at the overall material input in the European construction, timber is 3%. So I would say it's still a niche, but with a big room for improvement. And the demand is growing fast. And the new European Bauhaus wants to drive this transformation. You might know that the original Bauhaus movement that was founded in 1919 explored specifically new construction methods and new materials. At that time, it was, of course, concrete and steel. But at that time already, there was a great Finnish architect known around the world. His name is Alvar Aalto, very famous. He was a pioneer at that time already because he loved to work with wood. He used wood and created icons of wooden furniture. Actually, if you look at them today, they are still extremely modern in their design, so outstanding. Now, today we are lucky because we have a whole generation of young architects, designers, engineers that want to redefine our way of building and living. And they are rediscovering natural materials such as timber. And they have understood how smart nature is to find solutions. And they try to understand these nature-based solutions and to transform them into our world of construction, for example. We all know that today building with timber could save up to 40% of carbon emissions in comparison to concrete. That's a huge figure. So by keeping the carbon inside the wood, one day timber could turn our homes and even entire cities into carbon sinks. To some of you, this might sound like a dream. But in Finland, as well as in Estonia and Sweden, you are showing Europe already how this works, how this is possible and doable. You have centuries of experience in building out of wood. And we need your experience, now more than ever, to encourage sustainable forestry and lead the next revolution in architecture. So the new European Bauhaus aims to be a movement that brings like-minded people together, to generate new collaborations and new ideas, and bring to a wider public the many, many wonderful things that are being done by pioneers like you. And this brings me to my third and final point. Let's empower people to lead and drive this change. The growing importance that forest and construction will play in the green transition requires new skills, or perhaps it's old skills rediscovered. So we need more rangers, engineers, chemists, timber craftsmen, data specialists, you name it. And we know that these skills are in too short supply today. There's a recent report by the IFO Institute that found that nearly 35% of EU construction firms report a shortage of skilled workers, 35%. So skilling has to grow with the transformation we are aiming at. There will not be a green transformation if we don't have the skills and if they are not people who drive the transformation. And that is why we have proposed to make the year 2023 the European Year of Skills. The idea is to better match the different skilling strategy with the economy's needs for specific skills in the labor market. It is about bringing industry, forest owners, trade unions, universities, training providers together. An approach that we are pioneering with our Pact for Skills. We have created 12 large-scale partnerships offering skilling opportunities to 6 million European citizens of working age. But we need much, much more than this. And this is why I am happy to announce today that we are launching a new European Bauhaus Academy. The Academy will have 3 major priorities. First of all, it is about fostering green and digital skills in construction. We want to reskill and upskill at least 3 million construction workers in the next 5 years because we need them now to drive the transformation. The second point is we need more research and development and innovation in this crucial sector, and for that we need increased funding. Therefore, Horizon Europe, you all know our research program, highly worldwide renowned, will soon make a call for nature-based material demonstrators worth 10 million euros. We want to know what's out there as innovative ideas to then develop them and bring them to the market. I'm very grateful to John Schellenhuber for his initiative and advice in this issue. And we also want to learn from the new European Bauhaus how regulation can incentivize the use of quality nature-based solutions and biomaterials. And finally, the new academy will have a very strong digital focus. We want to provide online courses for sustainable forestry design and wood construction, and thus basically create a truly European wood academy or forest academy. And we will do that together with you, the Nordic Bauhaus. Many, many thanks for joining this. The Commission will make available an additional 1 million euros. I want to thank all three of you for your enormous commitment. It is your network of universities, of architects, of urban planners, of construction companies. You are the leaders in the field of sustainability. And we need your knowledge and we need your network to bring the best together. I think we can multiply your experience and your innovations all across the European Union and across the world. Because we are perhaps one small part of a global ecosystem, but we can be a big part of the solution if we do it right. So, ladies and gentlemen, you all know the old saying, when people sometimes miss the obvious, we say, you lose sight of the forest for the trees. Well, here today we do the exact opposite. We're zooming out, and it's about the big picture that we want to discuss. It's about embracing the importance of forests for our lives and our livelihoods. It's about forests as our home, forests as our economic foundation, and of course, forests as our best allies to fight climate change. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, President von der Leyen. Very inspiring words. And a new European Bauhaus Academy. How about that? That sounds very exciting as well. Now it's about time to hear from our neighbors. Because as you all know and have heard, here in the north, the climate is unfortunately warming faster than in the rest of the planet. So we are heading towards a greater degree warming already by now than the rest of the places. And that's, of course, a concern to our forests. And therefore, we are collaborating and trying to find ways with our neighboring countries of what to do with this. And therefore, it's more than appropriate now to hear their views. It's a great pleasure first to invite to the stage Prime Minister of Estonia, Kaja Kallas, please.
Dear Sanna, dear Ursula, dear Ebba, dear friends. It is my great pleasure to be here today, and I'm very thankful for our Finnish hosts to have this conference and making this event happen, and literally bringing us into the woods. And also, thank you, Ursula, for the new European Bauhaus. We have a saying, just like you said, in Estonian as well, you need to see the forest behind the trees, which means that we have to zoom out. This is what the new European Bauhaus is all about. Every Estonian is passionate about forests because a forest is more than we can measure. It has been an important place to hide, due to high history, to find peace and embrace nature. And it also is, as we say, it's a poor man's fur coat.
As forest-rich countries, forests have a special role in our culture and our people's hearts. And although Estonians are known as very tech-savvy people, we are actually very forest-minded people as well. Every child in Estonia knows which berries and mushrooms you can eat in the forest. And there's also a joke that you can eat all the mushrooms, just some of them only once. Forests are pivotal to the green transition and a part of the solutions in reaching climate neutrality, just like all the other sectors. We have set the much-needed climate and biodiversity goals in the EU in order to fight global climate change. But these goals and ambitions are only doable if we consider the right role for each sector and solutions for their transition. We expect a lot from our forests, but their main role is absorbing carbon. And it is also important sanctuary for many species and habitats, or it is also a vital source of livelihood and provider of resources. But it's also a place where we like to spend our time, to hike, exercise, relieve stress. As the founder of Bauhaus School, Walter Gropius, has said, under trees, the urban dweller might restore his troubled mind and find the blessing of a creative pause. As one can see, finding a balance between these sometimes conflicting roles of preservation and use is challenging. As another Estonian proverb says, there is no forest behind the forest. As it can be cut only once in a lifetime, we should aim to make it profitable for the owner as well as for the nature. Increasing natural sink and biodiversity are vital if we are to achieve climate neutrality. Only this way we can ensure our forests can fulfill all their functions, also in 50 and 100 years' time. As forest-rich countries with long experience in sustainable forest management, Estonia, Finland and Sweden can be pioneers in transforming the sector to be future-proof. Perhaps as a way forward, forestry also needs its own just transition fund for certain parts of the sector. We should also make preserving forests profitable for the owner, not only logging. Today, we are discussing how we use the resources that we get from the forest. I believe that this is one of the most important questions regarding any material we use. While sustainable biomass surely has its role in the energy sector transition, in short term, the way forward should be through using wood for long-term and high-value products. And perhaps this is also the way to bring these restoring and blessing effects Walter Gropius was talking about closer to more urban dwellers. High-value use cases such as wood as construction material are much more noticeable to people. This means that they see the changes the green transition is bringing to our lives. And if we do it right, we can inspire people by showing the improvement it brings to their living spaces. This is what the new Bauhaus initiative is all about. Timber is a natural fit for the European Bauhaus initiative, and the initiative itself can be an important enabler of sustainable forest management in the long term. We have used wood as construction material since prehistoric times, and our histories are deeply intertwined with it. Estonian children still visit the old wooden farmhouses that their forefathers lived in. They use timber to build their own first tree houses. And of course, when we are building a sauna, we built it out of wood. This is the deep connection with our material within our societies. In the last 30 years, the technology of using timber as a building material has developed a lot, and we have means to connect the old and the modern. To bring sustainable wood use to modern architecture and city planning, we have seen this development in Estonia already firsthand. New schools, kindergartens, apartment buildings, and much more are being built using timber in a contemporary way. This is why I'm proud that this event has been the impulse to create a platform between Estonia, Finland, and Sweden to develop skills related to the use of wood in the new European Bauhaus. This will also be our contribution to the new European Bauhaus Academy that Ursula was talking about. We want to develop skills related to the sustainable use of wood and provide opportunities for our scientists and companies to work together. Be it our strong wooden houses sector, whose products have reached over 70 countries, or the newly opened Timber Architecture Research Center at the Estonian Academy of Arts. We need people who are able to understand the vision of the new European Bauhaus and the opportunities and challenges that sustainable wood construction brings. I'm also very happy to announce that Estonia will be joining the Nordic Bauhaus family. This will be an excellent opportunity for our scientists and companies to develop shared culture and vision in building the best living environment and connect people with nature. I wish you all a fruitful discussions and very good event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Kallas, and warmly welcome to the Nordic Bauhaus. Next, let's go over to Sweden. And it's a great pleasure to invite Deputy Prime Minister Ebba Busch. Please.
Thank you so much, dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, bästa åhörare, hyvät kuulijat. I'm deeply honored to be here representing the new Swedish government, and I would like to thank our Finnish colleagues for inviting us all and for arranging this event in this beautiful, beautiful Venice. As Northerners, we are all somehow related to the forest. The woods are our home environment and, at the same time, one of our most important resources. It is a key resource for our industry, as well as for our well-being, culture, and environment. Using wood for building our houses has been a matter of course for as long as we have lived here. Among Swedes, the small red painted wood houses is probably one of the foremost national symbols that we all can relate to. I reckon most of you here are also familiar with the works of Swedish author Astrid Lindgren, and those Bullerby houses are common on this side of the Baltic Sea as well. Now might be the time for us to broaden the scope for what the woods can bring us. It might also be part of the solutions for the great challenges that we face today. Climate change leaves no one unaffected. Environmental problems are one of the great cross-border issues of our time. Our climate and environment policy must be ambitious. The Swedish government will develop a program for international climate investments in accordance with Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. These investments will contribute to achieving the Swedish climate objective of net zero emissions by 2045. When it comes to climate action, trade-offs must be made when interests are at odds. Forestry is one example. We would like to encourage the EU to take full account of the role that the forest plays, both as a source of energy, as a base for sustainable products, and as an economic engine, but also as a carbon sink and basis for biodiversity. Forestry and the use of forest-based products is really a key priority for the green transition. Forest-based products such as wooden houses, both reduce the dependency of fossil-based materials and act as carbon sinks, often for generations. Therefore, we need more, not less, sustainably produced wood from the forest. We need the forest to grow even better and continue to develop the way we manage our forests. High environmental ambitions should go hand in hand with increased sustainable forest growth and production. Each forest is a unique forest, and each forest owner is unique with unique goals for her forest. This diversity is a valuable strength as well as a big opportunity. In line with this, I think it is crucial to think that one size fits all is not the way forward when it comes to forestry. It is important to allow for consideration to both local and regional conditions. And it is my firm belief that sustainable forestry contributes to both fight climate change, safeguard biological diversity, and to enhance the bioeconomy. Many Swedish business actors have solutions that can accelerate the transition in areas such as sustainable materials, renewable energy, and energy efficiency, as well as create future competitiveness and add values for people and the society. Modern industrialized construction with wood is an excellent example of this. In Sweden, wood increases rapidly as a building material in both family houses, schools, and other buildings. And this creates double climate benefits: carbon stored in the buildings, as well as less CO2 emissions from fossil-based materials. Around 70% of Sweden is forest. We have some humans as well, but a lot is forest. And about 80% of our forest is in active use for timber production. Every year, almost 100 million cubic meters is harvested to be used as long-lived wood products, packaging, paper, and energy all over the world. And every year, at least 380 million trees are planted in Sweden. 380 million trees, that's a lot. Over the past 100 years, Sweden's forest resource has doubled. Active and sustainable forest management is an important part of that. Apart from the obvious climate benefits of wood construction, I would also like to highlight other positive aspects of this material, because wood is unique in the potential it brings to industrialization. Given its low weight, you can manufacture quite large prefabricated elements in a controlled factory environment, and this enables automation, repetition, and also cost effectiveness. As the construction sector struggles with low productivity, low innovation, and high costs, the benefits of increasing productivity in this sector cannot be understated. What goes around comes around. Finns phrase it, som man ropar I skogen får man svar. Niin metsä vasta kuin sinne huudetaan. Sanna, you'll have to help me with my Finnish afterwards. Thank you. You've heard why Finnish is the official language in heaven, right? It's because it takes an eternity to learn. Not my joke. On a serious note, no one can deny that the design of our built living environments impacts our lives and also shapes us as human beings. It affects our performance, resilience, health, and well-being. Also, and it affects how we take part in society. High quality in architecture and design is therefore a matter of quality of life and sustainability. The new European Bauhaus reflects Sweden's view on architecture and design as key tools for building sustainable societies. We all need carefully designed living environments that are both human-centered and address all the dimensions of sustainability. The creative process of architects and designers offers unique opportunities to probe more deeply into the problems and conditions prevalent in our societies, to find new solutions, to spur innovation, process and the transition to green economy, and not least to create sustainable, inclusive, and beautiful living spaces and environments in both urban and rural areas. With architectural expertise, sustainable forest-based materials, and innovative companies, the tradition of wood construction can continue to create resilient and beautiful living environments for future generations. From a Swedish perspective, I really appreciate the ambition of this event to highlight the value chain from forest to built environment. In line with the ambitions of the new European Bauhaus, this holistic view to sustainable development might be a key to future progress. Innovation and research are long-term motors of economy. Increased investments in these areas is crucial for European companies to assert themselves in global competition. The progress in wood building technology is a great example of how such investments can help us solve the urgent challenges of our time for the coming generations. I thank you once again for bringing these crucial issues to the agenda, and I wish you all a fruitful day of discussions and cooperations. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Tack så mycket. Det var mycket roligt. And now it's about the time to take a few steps deeper into the woods. We have now heard the strategic outlines, the strategic vision, what's going to happen. There will be a new European Bauhaus Academy. There is going to be a commitment of upskilling and developing skills that are related to sustainable construction, use of wood in that, and sustainable forestry. So now we will enter a different mode in our event. We will be hearing a keynote presentation in a bit, and then we will be entering a series of panel discussions during which there is also a possibility for the on-site and for the online audience to attend. But let's see. First, maybe a recap of how is the rest of the day going to be structured. It looks like this. Now we are here in the plenary track. And after these strategic visions, indeed, we will be hearing a keynote presentation and there will be a panel discussion, and we will then close this by greetings from the Minister of Environment and Climate of Finland. Then there's going to be a lunch break, and thereafter we will split into 3 tracks, one about forestry, one about carbon-neutral building and living, and the third about architecture inspired by nature. Then we will reconvene to the main event and have a summary discussion and also announce some interesting events and opportunities in the next coming months. And this part here, from the plenary to the summary, will be streamed online. And for those who are still lost here in the woods, there will be possibility to discuss about next steps and take some time for networking. But now, about how to participate. We are using a digital tool for that. It's called Slido, and you all can take part in this by simply taking your mobile phone, opening the browser, going to slido.com and entering password into the woods. Go to slido.com, enter into the woods, and let's open already the first question in Slido. And after you have answered that, we will see how our panelists will reply to the very same question. But now, without no further ado, it's time to get into our actual keynote presentation of today. That will be given by no less than Professor John Schellnhuber himself. Professor Schellnhuber is the founding director of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, and he's one of the most esteemed climate scientists of our time. So it's really a rare treat to have an expert like this in these latitudes. Professor Schellnhuber, we are very happy to having you here, and welcome to the podium.
Let me see. Yeah, thanks a lot, Excellencies, colleagues, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. I have been working on climate change for 40 years now, and my core business is telling the scientific truth. But I also have been turned into a storyteller in order to communicate my results. And so I'll tell you about the greatest story on this planet right now, which is related to what this conference is all about. So how did the modern age emerge? It emerged by using sunlight captured by plants. And it all started 400 million years ago. That is how coal was created. So we had wetlands, plants were cut off, oxygen, sedimentation and so on, created the coal seams, all used for 200 years now in order to create the modern world. This almost turned our planet into a snowball, glaciation all over the planet. We very narrowly escaped actually this overall glaciation, and we wouldn't be here actually if another 40 or 50 ppm would have been extracted by this process of creating the modern fossil fuels. So this is Snowball Earth, and it happened 2 times in the history of our planet many million years ago. A former student of mine has published this paper and showed that we narrowly escaped through this extremely effective process of photosynthesis and sedimentation, another Snowball Earth episode. Actually, we have to mimic this type of extraction of carbon from the atmosphere now, but not over 300 million years, but over 2 centuries. That is creating a carbon sink, which brings our planet back on track away from hothouse Earth, because that is the scientific truth, that we are very close to a hothouse Earth episode again. And we have published this paper on trajectories, which has become one of the most cited papers in modern times now. And recently a paper called The Climate Endgame, because for the first time really looking into not the optimistic scenarios, but the bad to worst case scenarios of climate change. And this could be brought about by Ursula von der Leyen knows this pretty well, because I gave a lecture a long time ago before you became president of the European Commission about sort of cascades of tipping points which could put us on a track towards hothouse Earth. And this could be 3, 4, 5 degrees warming. And I'm deeply convinced now, after publishing hundreds of papers on that, it would be the end of our civilization. So we have to replay the Carboniferous game again, which happened 300 million years ago. And the co-transformation of land use and building the environment, construction, the co-transformation is the actually basis for doing that. So I just show you a presentation of global warming, which I guess will convince everybody in the end. So you see the concentration of CO2 is rising slowly first, now almost exponentially in the atmosphere. And you see the blue and yellow and red stripes. This is how global warming, you see on the right-hand side the caption for it. And you see 2 things. First of all, we are entering now a warm age, and it could become a hothouse age. What you also see, and I think that's interesting for the Scandinavian countries, in the 70s and 80s we had this problem with acid rain. And you can see actually the hallmark of that, because global warming started to emerge because of CO2 after the Second World War. You see the first stripes of yellow around 1945, 1950. But when they disappear, why did they disappear? Because we used so much oil, coal, and so on, full of sulfur, that we masked global warming for a while. And this created acid rain, and it destroyed lakes in Scandinavia and so on, and forests in Germany, etc. So we put filters into the factories and the power stations. And we removed the sulfur mask, and global warming became untamed. Now you see it emerging quickly. So this very picture tells you a very sobering, a very disturbing, and a very impressive story alone. So what is the situation? And I'm supposed to tell you the blunt truth about global warming. We had Sharm el-Sheikh, we had the Paris Agreement, all these things. We have the ambition to limit global warming to well beyond 2 degrees. And we scientists fully subscribe to that, of course, because this is the way to avoid tipping points in the Earth system. There is also this more ambitious goal of reducing global warming to 1.5 degrees. Now I show you what will happen, actually. So you see the timeline, 1900 to 2200, you see global warming. And this is the current situation. We have now, let's see, global warming of 1.2 degrees already. So we are not far away from the 1.5 degrees line. But this is what will happen under business as usual. We will go far beyond that. And if the tipping points conspire, we will be driven into a hothouse Earth where our civilization cannot be sustained. I'm absolutely blunt about this. So the only thing I think, because of the laws of physics, can be done is this scenario, namely overshoot scenario. That means we will have to contain global warming to very close to 2 degrees. The 1.5 degrees line cannot be held. I mean, it would be a miracle. It would be against all odds and all laws of physics and chemistry. But we can try to keep global warming as close to 2 degrees only, overshoot maybe 2 or 3 tenths of a degree. And then we have to work back to a global warming level and a concentration level in the atmosphere that can support 10 billion people on this planet. And this will be done through negative emissions. So we should not only talk about climate neutrality, we should talk about climate positive action, which is able to repair our planet. So it's climate restoration. First, of course, it's stabilization, but then it will be climate restoration. And we have taken 2 centuries in order to destroy the atmosphere. It will take another 2 centuries at least to repair the atmosphere. So that's the blunt truth. And construction and sustainable forestry is key to all this, actually. It's the biggest factor in the climate equation. And it took us 10 or 20 years to even recognize that. This conference clearly is echoing this evidence. So let me go on and show you this, because it's my great pleasure to show you this picture. We had a conference in Rome. I'm a member of the Pontifical Academy of Science. This is at the footsteps of the Academy in the Vatican Gardens, and we had the honor, Ursula von der Leyen gave the keynote, but you also had world-class scientists here and world-class architects. Francis Carré, who won the Pritzker Prize, is standing next to the German Federal Minister for Construction, Clara Geiwitz. You see Francis Carré originating from Burkina Faso. You have Bjarke Ingels from Denmark. You had world-class scientists, architects, business people, and so on, and a number of decision makers. And I think this was an event which really reflected the integrated spirit of the new Bauhaus movement. Because it was mentioned several times by the prime ministers, by the deputy prime minister. The original Bauhaus, which was founded in 1919 in Weimar in Germany after the destructions of the First World War, was inspired by this holistic view to create, now I use a German word, I was treated with Finnish phrases here at this conference already, which I didn't understand. So I will retaliate now in German. So, but you will understand it. So Walter Gropius was speaking about Gesamtkunstwerk, you know, a whole piece of art which is capturing all the aspects. And this is what we need to do now. And the new European powerhouse launched by Ursula von der Leyen is reflecting the spirit. But now, with the means of the 21st century, because we have to deliver this vision within the planetary boundaries. It's a completely new situation. So let me talk a little bit about the technicalities. Can this be done? Well, we published a paper 2 years ago, which has become a highly cited paper already. We didn't think so. It is about buildings as a global carbon sink, and it's precisely this idea. If we transform construction and infrastructures and use bio-based materials, if we use the natural solutions, we can actually turn our cities, our villages, our homes, our infrastructures into carbon sinks. But only if we use wood, timber, bamboo, what have you, in the global south, in the global north, for long-term value creation. Burning wood is a very bad idea from the point of view of climate science. I give you just one example. Human population will peak at about 10 billion in 2060 or so. Where will these people live in the future, these 2 billion? Most of them will be born in Africa, in Latin America, in South Asia, and so on. We have already 1 to 2 billion people living in slums today. Now, if you would house these 2 billion people, on the right-hand side, you see the emissions that would be created if you do conventional construction. It would add another 70 billion tons of CO2 alone to the atmosphere. But how about doing it the other way around? If we settle 2 billion people the climate-friendly way, sorry, I have to go back here. Here you go. You would shrink this emission column to almost nothing, but on the right-hand side you see, on the left-hand side you see, that you would store more than 70 billion tons of CO2 in these buildings. So if you add this up, this is already 40% of the carbon budget left for the 1.5 degrees liner. So settling these 2 additional new arrivals in the sustainable way would make all the difference already. So let me go on. For doing that, we simply calculated how much new plantations we would have to create. It's 150 million hectares. But that's not much if you compare that we have about 1 billion hectares on this planet of degraded land which can be reforested. And it can be done in various ways. No-tech, that is Tony Rinaldo, who also joined us in Rome, who with very primitive methods can show that you can reforest the Sahel zone, for example. Or you can use high-tech. There is a very interesting company in Scotland for reforesting the Scottish Highlands, actually, which they are using vertical incubators for accelerating the raising of saplings and things like that. Of course, you need to deal with your forests here in Finland in a sustainable way. You have to balance biodiversity, biomass in the forest, and of course the extraction of biomass by harvesting in a very subtle way, but I think this can be overcome. I'll just show you here quickly, Mark Palai from the European Forest Institute based here in Finland has provided me with this slide, and we're working together very closely. But in principle, the forests are expanding in Europe, actually. Why is it so? Well, they thrive in the climate we have modified. It's getting warmer. You have more precipitation, actually, in the northern countries. And you have CO2 fertilization effect, because the forests thrive on our pollution. That's the irony of the situation. So if we use this excess sort of biomass and turn it into storage through the cities, when we have a win-win situation. So going towards the bioeconomy also means, this is a complicated and very busy figure, but just draw your attention to the lower part on the right-hand side. The cascade of utilizing biomass has to be changed, because now 50% of the biomass is finally burned for energy and things like that. This has to be changed. Wood is too precious to burn it. And by the way, also the biodiversity, which is providing us so many innovations and inspirations. Unfortunately, we are burning the book of life before we have studied it. And I show you here, you see, this is the idea, and it's a simile. Whether you want to catch water or you want to catch carbon, you can simply say, you know, you have a cistern on the left-hand side and you have rain, and finally you have filled the cistern, that is, you leave the forest alone in order to suck up carbon and to mature and so on. But at a certain stage, the water will overflow. So it's much better actually to do this one. You extract some of the water, keep catching the rain, that means keep catching the biomass, and you bottle the water. These are the buildings. And if this is not enough, you do the following, you build another cistern that is afforestation. So this is the way to really make the best use of forest. It's a busy scheme. I tried to convert it into a cartoon, but believe me, it's a truthful representation of the situation. And I'm happy to lecture any one of you, including the prime ministers, if you have any demand for that. So this is the, if you like, the manual for saving the planet. So we use the forest for creating timber. We replant every tree we cut down, of course, and we build and plant even more trees. And we will circulate the material, the precious material within the built environment. That means we have to build buildings in a way we can deassemble them, deconstruct them, and turn them into other buildings, so we can use one element of timber for 1,000 years, more or less. So let me conclude. So I just skip that. The great transformation is, and that was mentioned by the distinguished politicians here already, we have to move from a dumb linear petroeconomy, which is supporting our modern civilization, into a smart circular bioeconomy. There will be either green business in the future or no business at all on this planet. In order to do so, and this is the last slide, in history, we talk about the Stone Age, for example, and then the Bronze Age and the Iron Age and so on. I think now the age of biomaterials is dawning. And we have not even tried to understand the wealth of natural solutions available. And this is a picture I'm using from this publication by Fernandez and Ritzas. And this is a logarithmic scale, by the way. It shows you density and strength of materials, and there's a universe of natural solution out there to support our bioeconomy. We have not even tried to understand 1% of this wealth, actually. So, saving the climate will be done for this co-transformation of land use and construction, but actually building a new economy and a new world will be based on natural solutions. And this meeting here today will be part of the journey. Actually, it will be, I think, a historical moment we will remember forever. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Schellnhuber. This was really insightful, and it's a serious message. But I believe that there is also some room for optimism if we act decisively. So let's continue the program. Our esteemed Prime Ministers and President are now having their next program, but we will continue here with the panel discussion just in a bit. And may I also invite our panelists here to the stage as we are doing the transformation. Please do take your seats, dear panelists. So if we can have, yes, please. Please. So let's begin the panel discussion. Today I will be joining you here in the panel and introducing you in the order where you are sitting. So we are very delighted to have a group of experts and leading policymakers. Starting from the right-hand side, it's a great pleasure to welcome Commissioner Virginijus Sinkevicius, Commissioner for the Environment. Welcome to the panel. Then next we have Anna Weidenbach from the Cabinet of Commissioner for the Energy, Kadri Simpson. Welcome to the panel. And then we also have Eva Furman. You are the Secretary General of the National Commission on Sustainable Development at the Prime Minister's Office. It's great to have you here. And as we've heard, the construction sector is such a great and vital player in this equation of ours. And therefore, it's very nice to have a representative from a leading construction company. We have Lena Höök from Skanska Group. Lena, you are Executive Vice President and you are working with sustainability and innovation. Welcome to the panel. And then, last but definitely not least, we have Alan Organsky from Bauhaus Earth. Alan is a well-known wood architect and educator running a Gray Organsky Architecture in USA, and also the faculty of Yale School of Architecture. So, and I hope that the first question is now already open in the Slido, and I encourage all the audience to go there and have your say. Do that by going into slido.com, slido.com, and enter the code Into the Woods, and you can reply to the first question. And let's hear how your replies are in line with what the panel will be saying. But now, without no further ado, let's go to the panel. I would like to just hear a quick reflection from all of you. You have now heard the strategic outlines of the Prime Ministers and the President, and very sort of like interesting yet serious words of Professor Schellnhuber. If you can, in just one or two sentences, describe what's on top of your mind at this very moment regarding the topic of the day. Shall we begin from Commissioner, please?
Yes, thank you very much, and of course, good morning, everyone, and thank you for an excellent lecture. Probably in two sentences, difficult to describe, especially the emotional part of the lecture. But I think overall, you know, the public here is from different sectors, including forestry, and clearly it has an important role to play in the future that we are going to have a massive challenge ahead of us. But also that future is very much endangered. And I think the base of all that has to be a good condition of our ecosystems, of our forests, peatlands, and so on, and that the ecosystem services could provide those valuable materials for that future to be built.
Anne, please.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Good to be with you. Yeah, what I took away from or what I heard is that nature is our ally. It should be our main teacher. But living together and in the nature means also to know our limits and to respect, so that we can best learn how to duplicate all the processes ongoing. How we can what can we learn from carbon capture potential and about the renewable sources inside. So I would say that was my main takeaway in terms of nature.
Nature's ally. Eva, what do you think?
Yes, thank you very much as well from my side. From me, how I saw it was that there's lots of ambitious thoughts here, and we really should pay attention that we are going to have 2 billion more people on the world, and Scandinavia is very much looked upon in sustainability issues. So it's a great responsibility for us as well. And then the second point I think which is really important, is to understand that this issue is not so much about life on Earth. It's about human societies, and life will continue, but whether we are living here and how our well-being is going to be built, that's the question.
Yes, as Professor said, it's about how the civilization will end up. Leena, Skanska's views on this.
Well, I think from listening in today, we can clearly conclude that we can and need to raise expectations on what the built environment can do when it comes to have a more positive, sustainable impact. How to make that happen even faster, I think that's the key. And also why we need to have this cross-sector, cross-expertise dialogues, and why I look forward to the new European Bauhaus to focus on the built environment and spread and speed up that knowledge to make action.
Indeed. Alan, your views?
Well, I think what we heard today is that we have accelerating crises and we're pending catastrophes, and that with that acceleration, we need to accelerate the gaining of human knowledge about how to respond to that and how to act. And that's a huge challenge. But I think the challenge isn't just restoring biodiversity or just storing carbon. I think we have to transform the Anthropocene into a sort of symbiocene, where we're working simultaneously between our activities as humans, which have been destructive historically, to something that's more synergistic with forests and other natural systems.
Transforming the Anthropocene, indeed, that is a task. Now let's get into the actual panel discussion, and I'd like to begin from Commissioner. As one of the 3 values of the new European Bauhaus is sustainability. So I think that it's good to start from there. And if we think about the built environment and construction is the most material intensive sectors on this planet. And as we have heard, the extraction of raw materials is a key driver for biodiversity loss as well, unfortunately. So how would you, Commissioner, how would you describe the priorities for building good living environments for humans, but keeping within the planetary boundaries? I mean, we are about to go towards 2 billion extra people here.
Yeah, so challenge is massive, and that's definitely requires first of all a horizontal approach. We cannot expect to solve climate crisis in sort of this silo of look from the environmental point of view or climate point of view. It's a horizontal change, and of course many of the first of all the way our economy is now built is going to change drastically. It will have to, on one hand, cater for more people. On the other hand, it will have to do it in a planetary boundaries, ensuring that we not only go beyond 1.5 or 2 degrees, but we actually do not destroy ecosystems. Because again, you cannot have an expectations of solving climate puzzle, which the professor put it in front of us, while continue to destroy oceans, forests, rainforests, for example, because they absorb large amounts of CO2. So that's going to be a massive challenge. And of course, here, for example, construction sector, which prime ministers and president intervention and Bauhaus focuses a lot, going to have to play a massive role. And the use of wood, sustainable use of wood, is going to be, of course, a key priority here. I think what's extremely important is to reach and understand the efficiency. Burning wood was clearly said here, it's the worst what can happen. There is a massive potential, and I think the Scandinavian countries has this inbuilt knowledge which can be shared globally. Because due to its lightness, for example, we can way better use the current infrastructure and not to expand further on. So I think all these and further technologies, they will be developed, they will be shared across, and the Bauhaus can play a leading role. But we should not underestimate the challenge. It's going to be massive. We can, of course, have a leading position with our knowledge, with our inbuilt experience, but we will need the rest of the world on board too.
Yeah, that's how we hopefully will see things to evolve. Anne, now I think it's about time to talk about the second value of the European Bauhaus, that's inclusion. And with that, we are talking about the social sustainability. And oftentimes when we talk about sustainable construction, we often see quite big price tags. It's not the most cheapest option out there, unfortunately. So from your perspective, what do you think? What would be the routes to mainstreaming construction so that it becomes at the same time environmentally and socially sustainable while being affordable? Is there any path there?
Yeah, thanks a lot for the question. Indeed, housing costs increased tremendously during the last years, other than the incomes increased. But maybe, or just one point, I think we see it more now. We are very clear that the costs for living are driven by the energy we use. And this is why also the Commission proposed with the renovation wave a way to address the roots of, let's say, sustainable living, but also inclusion and equality in terms of the right to have access to energy and healthy living. And it's not only the renovation wave, not only about targets and increasing energy efficiency, for example, but it's also to have a positive contribution towards less air pollution and thereby providing better health conditions for people. So it's also about inclusion. What we are doing for ring fencing or mainstreaming social equalities and to fight against energy poverty. You see new and strengthened provisions in the Energy Efficiency Directive, but also in the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. It's not only about increasing the targets, but to have clear requirements that a building need to be renovated and in a harmonized way. So buildings are the ones we need to target to ensure that we can live in an inclusive way.
Yes, that will be definitely the goal. Eva, we will hear from you while we, in a minute, look at the audience responses to Slido questions. So I'm going to now ask from Lena one question while we wait for your turn. So, Lena, representative of the construction industry, what do you think about Commission's views here? From your perspective and from the industrial perspective, what do you feel that are the most urgent issues that construction companies should solve in order to provide solutions to climate and biodiversity crisis in an affordable manner? That's not an easy equation.
Well, I firmly embrace that we need to have sustainability as part of the economic dimension, also for business. And that is also needed in order to scale innovative and sustainable solutions. So take a very concrete example. There is today possibilities to actually pave the ways with near zero asphalt, near zero emission asphalt. And that's due to using circular solutions, biobinders, electrical vehicles, etc., with green energy. However, we need to ensure that that is also the most preferable choice. Mostly it is actually public procurement when it comes to procure paving ways. So we have to have these new innovations, but also make them scalable and making them part of the economic offering and business case that is the most attractive. To take another example, where the industry and the built environment can actually rethink what a building can do. It's possible today to construct a building that is actually producing more energy than what is needed through its whole lifetime. So that actually building's producing energy that is beyond what's needed for construction of materials, for energy needed for the construction of the building, as well as operating it during its lifetime. These kinds of innovations, we already have them here today, but we need to attach them to the business case, to the economic reality. So this is being the most preferable choices, because it should not just be, as for Skanska, we have built 5 of these. We call them powerhouse because they are truly powerhouses. We have built 5 of them. It ought to be so many more all over the world, because that is how you see a building being a part of the ecosystem and also thinking through the whole life cycle. So how to spur these innovations, attach it to the business case, attach it to the economic systems, so sustainability becomes an integrated part of what is actually the most preferable choice.
All right, Alan, as an architect, and while listening to the views of the Commission and the construction industry, is this the recipe to low-carbon construction?
Well, I think all of it is a recipe, or there are ingredients in the recipe. And I think what we really have to be careful of is the terminology that we use, because I think we lull ourselves into a false sense of accomplishment. I think when we say things like net zero or carbon neutral, we really have to understand what the system boundaries are of that analysis. And quite often we make narrowing analyses so that we're allowed to say these positive things about our work. And I think we have to be a little more critical, and we have to really look entirely at not only the building life cycle, but beyond the building life cycle, reaching back into the sources, the forests, the grasslands from which we draw our resources, because we have unintended consequences and impacts there. And so we shouldn't be too self-congratulatory about that. We have to be rigorous. And at the same time, we have to really look at the end of lives. What happens to all those semiconductor metals that produce solar photovoltaic arrays at the end of their lives? How do we reuse them? How do we develop scenarios for life cycle assessment so that we can give proper credit to wood as a stored carbon system, rather than assuming that at the end of their life cycle that it will be destroyed, landfilled, and eventually off-gas the carbon that's in it. So, we have to be creative about that, not just to make buildings that are designed for disassembly, but developing scenarios by which we could reuse the materials so that we're future-proofing the things that we make and looking back to the sources. So it's a sort of trans-life cycle, extra life cycle set of considerations, along with all those amazing material innovations. We have to also test what unseen impacts we may create.
Future-proofing, indeed. Now let's have a look at the replies of the first Slido question. We asked that what in the use of forests should we prioritize as we try to approach carbon neutrality and negativity? And the vast majority of the votes go to biodiversity. Then next is renewable resources that substitute more harmful raw materials, and the third one is carbon sinks. These 3 clearly lead the pack. And now, Eva, I would like to turn to you, because this is your field. You are working with the you can just keep the Slido results visible so that we can discuss them. So, Eva, considering the sustainable use of forests, what should we prioritize? Of course, this is not an easy question to be answered maybe in a few sentences, but ecosystem services, biodiversity, welfare, income. What is the way of finding a balance between things that are, all of these are understandable and can be, justified from a multiple perspectives? How can we find a balance?
Well, I think the key thing is that we make a combination and optimal. We aim for an optimal combination of these, and a systems approach is very important. And I think that's why I like the Bauhaus very much. We should actually see the Bauhaus even in a broader context. So thinking about the kind of business approach or then the more ecosystem-based approach, we need to move on both of those. As we heard, the situation is actually really difficult, and we need to understand we are able to move forward, but it really takes lots of effort and radical changes in our societies at the moment. Everyone is needed. So I would also broaden the picture of sustainability from these 3 dimensions to move to culture, to peace, to safety. Many things, they are all linked with it, and that's the way that we can, in a way, get everyone on board. And I would like to, in a way, see the house of sustainability transformation, so that the human well-being is, in a way, the roof, and then the kind of founding is the ecosystem services or the ecosystems. And then we have these different pillars that are making the radical transformation, where construction of housing is, and communities, built environment is, and food, energy, and economy. So I think that is really crucial. And it's a very much of education thing, both of us as well as the youth, is that it's about, well, you can say it's a remarriage between humans and the nature to a certain extent. And when you are married, so you don't support your partner only when the partner is nice, you support all the time, and you need to accept it. And I think that's actually a very sort of naive but a very simple way of really putting the thing.
Yeah, that's quite catchy. Remarriage, supporting the partner, touches the heart. But Commissioner, what's your reflection on this difficult yet very, very important topic? That do you think it's possible to ensure that we achieve this holistic vision that Eva just described without trade-offs that would cause too much collateral damage?
So I would begin that, of course, it's possible to achieve, but it's not going to be easy. And we should not fool ourselves that this horizontal change, which I named, which very much was reflected in those introductory speeches, is going to be an easy one. And I always look at this change not sort of in pillars, but I would say in layers. So you have this first of all, ecosystem layer, which everything is kind of holding on, and that thin matter, which is sort of our life web. And if we lose that, then we were absolutely done, because there will be no technologies that can replace it. But then the other layers are built on that, and you can go deeper into economic change, into energy, and etc. I think circularity now becoming a bigger and bigger and more easable to understand. And I'm extremely happy that business is catching it. The momentum is definitely there. We need to, of course, ensure that with certain incentives, with policies that actually address the gaps, we incentivize businesses even more. And then I think, of course, that change is possible, but it clearly has to come with the benefits to society, and society has to be part of the journey. We still have a lot, I think, where opinions are sometimes, that people agree, But then when the real change kicks in, they say, whoa, I didn't sign for that. And then you have a lot who just doesn't care. So there is, and they all have to be part of that journey, because that transition can only happen if everyone on board. So it will be a massive challenge. I hope that we will be able not to lose those basic layers, and to always keep then in mind that we have to balance and not to go too deep. But that balance and that thin margin is going to be extremely close.
Indeed. Now let's turn our attention then towards future. And as we've heard, there are immense challenges, but also quite good opportunities ahead of us. And of course, meeting these needs skills. And let's now open the next question in Slido, in which you don't need to show it now, but if you open that in the Slido so that the audience can reply to that. So we will be asking that what skills are essential for making all this happen. And we will also have a quick round here in the panel while you are having your say. Because as we heard today, there's going to be a new European Bauhaus Academy, and obviously it's all about developing skills. And now this is the first opportunity to have your say that what skills we need in this particular field. And I'd like to hear a very quick round from all the panelists in just a couple of words. What skills do we need in the future to making this happen? Alan, shall we start from you?
Skills. Interdisciplinarity sounds really good. It's really hard in this very departmentalized university systems that we have, and also in the subsectors of the building sector. It's hard to break down those silo walls. I think what we really need is true science education, even for the most creative thinkers in the worlds of the arts. I think science, basic science, is lacking. I see in the professional schools of architecture in the US. I know they exist in the technical institutes that are doing wonderful academic and scientific research, technological research in Europe. But I think for the everyday practitioners, we need to remind them of science skills that will allow them to make really good decisions.
Science interdisciplinarity. Leena.
Well, I was visiting a construction site yesterday, boots on the ground. You need to really understand from the very beginning the life cycle perspective, and also to assess the emissions, the carbon emissions throughout that life cycle. And that's actually how you can compare different solutions and be fair about it. And we have come far when it comes to carbon and carbon calculations. However, there's a whole new field when it comes to biodiversity, also needed to be specified.
That's exactly. Eva, what skills?
I agree very much with the previous two ideas, both the interdisciplinarity and the life cycle understanding systems approach as well. But I would go even further. I would go to transdisciplinarity, which means that the different disciplines are working with the society, and that brings us also to the inclusion issue. And something that is definitely important, and maybe we touch about it soon, is future skills. Is really this, well, you touched upon this imagination, but I think one of the problems why we don't get any further is that we don't really have skills of even imagining the future or thinking of alternative futures.
Anne, what do you think about the skills needed?
Yeah. Maybe quickly, just to add another perspective, I think we really need technical and financial advice. So to reach out to people living in rural areas, in cities, so to have project assistance, to have a network of experts, not only coming from energy or construction sector, but also from the social sector, big hospitals and schools, so that everyone can be addressed or reached, and that's what we identified also as a big challenge. But this has to happen. And regarding the financial assistance, I think we also need closer cooperation and upskilling of knowledge in financial institutions. What is the value of sustainable living? Also regarding providing loans to people who have no upfront savings, for example. And I think this is really, these are 2 points I want to make.
Commissioner, what sort of skills do we need?
I think at the end of the day, for a successful transition, you will have to have two, so green and digital. And that goes into a variety of skills, and probably a few days if this conference would be going on, we still wouldn't name all of them because we still don't know some of them. So I think what's the biggest challenge, and we are facing it already, a huge mismatch of skills, a huge gap of skilled workers. So reskilling is going to be something that we need to put enormous focus on, working together with, of course, businesses, with education. And I'm not only talking absolutely scientists and so on, but we have huge gap of blue collar workers in parts of Europe, which I would never thought as a former Minister of Economy that those parts of Europe will be facing the same of the issues. So reskilling can actually not only help us to close that gap, but also to move on with the transition. Because when we have a European regions fully dependent on coal, people working in coal power plants for 50, 60 years, some of them maybe 20, what is the tomorrow for them? And how can we help them? And how quickly we can reskill them so that they would feel at the end of the day that they are part of the society and that they not beyond that transition. So that's going to be huge. I think extremely important that digital and green, which goes into business, education and policy making.
Thank you very much. And now let's have a look at what the audience thought about the necessary skills. Looks like this. The winner of the vote is climate impacts of construction. I think that's something that, Lena, you were referring to when talking about these ways of quantifying. Life cycle approach brought up, circular economy, architecture and design, interesting. Biodiversity and climate impacts of forestry come with 20% share, new manufacturing technologies and energy efficiency. Oh, wow, carbon capturing 9%. Just transition 9%. Planetary engineering, somebody's proposing this as well. That's interesting. And empathy, life cycle costing, social impact assessment, and so forth. This is interesting. We will take this. Thank you, audience, for your views. We will take this for the food of thought for developing the topics for the new Bauhaus Academy. And I'd like to finalize the panel discussion. I mean, I have lots of questions here that we could go on for another hour, but I think there is somebody who wants to get coffee and so forth. So I'd like to ask something personal from all of you. Is there some personal memory that you could share with us today, through which you have gained emotional connection to any of the values of the new European Bauhaus, namely sustainability, inclusion, and aesthetics? Any personal memory? And shall we start from this side and go around the circle and finalize them? Alan, please.
Before I suffered middle-class guilt and went to architecture school, I was a woodworker and a cabinet maker, and my memory, which is still strongly felt, is working with a piece of wood with, say, a chisel, and feeling the resistance of that material and the variability of that material, and trying to adjust the way I put pressure onto that tool to respond to the very specific biological nature of that material that I was working on. And I think that feels like, to me, a very important metaphor for how to move forward.
Touch of wood. Lena.
Well, entering Sagrada Familia and seeing architecture truly being inspired by nature, I have to say that kind of touches your soul, but also understanding that this has been a construction project for 140 years. People have been going on to actually implement the vision of Gaudi. I think that actually makes me inspired and also a bit hopeful that the importance of visions and a common view of where we are heading actually can have the engagement and the commitment by many to do the solutions that no one actually thought was possible, because let's remember, they did not have the design and the sketches and the capabilities 140 years ago, and still we see an amazing building. So to me, that's quite touching.
That is, I agree. Eva.
Yes, this is a wonderful question, I think, and emotions are always important. And well, maybe most emotional experience was last summer. I went to see my grandchildren. They were on a hut building course fairly close here.
Wow.
For 1 week. They were age of 5 and 7, and they were building from local materials, and they had some bamboo, and they were building different kind of huts and places where people and animals can live. And then when it all finished, they took all the nails away and so forth. It was organized by the architecture school. So that was
Wow.
lovely.
Next generation building a better
Yes.
future. Anne.
I think my connection is more to the inclusion part, just because also in the area where I grew up, and I think everybody knows it, that you could identify the houses where the vulnerable people live. You could smell it because there was more coke burned, and this is still something I remember, and I think this is a point of discrimination that needs to end. I mean, and that's the beauty of the Bauhaus, to allow everyone to have access to aesthetic buildings, to sustainable buildings.
That's interesting. Commissioner.
Every summer I would spend in the outskirts in the village, which probably is just 7 houses, which is a huge distance in the woods. And I hated when I was a child because I wanted to stay in city and spend time with my friends. But I think what was very clear when I look back at it now, it was a wooden house, which my mom grew up with 6 children in total in family. And if you look at the square meters, it's definitely not the houses that we see now, but it was nothing extra and not less. And most importantly, to ensure day-to-day activities, you are very dependent on nature. And you cannot push nature too far. Neither it can give you something for granted, because you are very much dependent on weather, on conditions, and so on, to provide for yourself and for the family. So I think we sometimes need to rediscover that connection and realize that our great businesses, economies, they are very much also dependent on nature. And sometimes when we over-push it, that endangers, unfortunately, also our well-being.
We couldn't agree more. So with that said, I think it's time to thank our panelists. Thank you very much for coming. Commissioner, Anne, Leena, Eva, Alan. So please take back your seats, and we'll go on with the program. And we'll start to finalize this first plenary session of today. So towards the end of the first session, we will hear about the steps forward. What shall we do later today, and how should we look at the future and what it will bring us? So it's my great pleasure now to welcome on stage Maria Ohisalo, Finland's Minister for the Environment and Climate Change. Minister Ohisalo, please.
Dear participants, dear friends, thank you for coming, and thank you for the great lecture, Dr. Schellenhuber. That was really a timely one. And thank you for the panel discussion also. As we heard this morning, forests definitely and indeed are allies for a carbon neutral future. And this was what the President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, greatly said here. Forests are also home to many of our species and habitats, and host a big part of our endemic biodiversity. And we're still losing biodiversity at an alarming rate. While 3/4 of our landmass is covered by forests, only actually few percent are old natural forests. About 1/3 of our endangered species in Finland live in forests. And this is often, while Finland is regarded being really a country of forests, I want to still picture that number, that there aren't that many old natural forests.
As regards our forest carbon sink, we received very alarming preliminary results last spring. It seems that the Finnish forest carbon sink has shrunk dramatically. This is very worrying because our national 2035 climate neutrality target relies much on our forest carbon sink. And we will learn the final results and reasons behind this development by the end of this year. But at the panel, as Principal Alan Organshi mentioned, we cannot lull ourselves to think this task is going to be easy regarding the carbon sinks. Friends, although wood is a renewable resource, the supply of wood is not limitless. Buildings and the construction sector, on the other hand, desperately need solutions for decarbonizing. Approximately 40% of global greenhouse gas emissions are emitted by the built environment. The way we build today has also a big negative impact on biodiversity. Extraction of raw materials causes 90% of global biodiversity loss, and construction is responsible for half of the global raw material consumption. There are now 8 billion people on this planet, and the number is just increasing, as we know. There are also more than 8 million different species of animals and plants that live here as our neighbors. We must find space and comfort for all of us. Given our situation today, I find it very interesting to make comparisons to the origins of the new European Bauhaus. That is the original Bauhaus 100 years ago. In those days, Europe was recovering from the First World War, providing decent living conditions were high on the social agenda, and an industrial production of affordable houses and household items was seen as a path there. The original Bauhaus is well known for the idea of building as a comprehensive artwork. That is where different forms of art, design, and architecture meet. But it is less known that holistic well-being was also in the DNA of the architecture at the original Bauhaus. The aim was to find a harmony between the needs of an individual and the society. The need to find harmony is still very valid, and I dare to say that its relevance has even grown. Our lifestyles are out of balance, and we are seriously violating the planetary boundaries. We should find harmony between the needs of the environment and the economy, between humans and non-humans, between the needs of developed and developing countries. The original idea of Bauhaus incorporated also the idea of social inclusion, which is still very relevant today. And actually, I want to state here that in Finland, we are determined to eradicate homelessness completely within this decade. I'm not sure whether there are many countries in the world that are actually putting this on the paper, that we really want to get rid of homelessness. We need to seek harmony between nature and society, not only because of altruistic reasons, but because humans as a species need the services nature provides us. Forests are irreplaceable homes for biodiversity and act as carbon sinks. Forests also hold a great potential for providing renewable raw materials for a carbon-neutral economy. These raw materials should be used in a way that is as long-term and high-value as possible. Building with wood can reduce the carbon footprint of construction and at the same time bind carbon for a very long time. Using wood in construction to replace high-emission materials in a manner that binds carbon for a long time is, in my view, one of the best uses of this valuable resource. And at the same time, We must make sure that our use of forest resources supports the maintenance and enhancement of carbon sink in line with our national Finland's 35 climate neutrality target and leads to enhancing biodiversity towards nature positive forest management. Dear friends, I would like to propose we lift our eyes and look into the future. What would our forests and buildings look like in a climate-neutral Europe? What kind of architecture and design would take us there? Let us imagine a climate-neutral Europe. Let's ask ourselves, what could I do to make it happen? What can we do together to reach this goal as soon as possible? This afternoon, we will have a chance to practice this approach. It is my sincere wish that this sort of future-oriented discussion would spark new ideas and new inspiration. Dear friends, I think that together we can build a climate-neutral future. And let's find new inspiration for that today. Thank you very much for participating.
Thank you very much, Minister Ohisalo, for your wise words. And now let's wrap up the first session of today. After the break, we are indeed going to continue to find new ideas. And I will be showing that how are we going to take it from there. So there will be 3 tracks to choose from at the venue here on site and also online. So the first track will be about the future of forests. The on-site attendees, it's going to be here in this place, in the main auditorium. And we will be having a discussion about how to take forestry and forest management forward in a sustainable manner, chaired by Tuomo Kalliokoski from the Ministry of the Environment. Second track, which will be on the second floor upstairs, is all about carbon neutral building and living. And this will be chaired by Ms. Veronika Valksiska from Estonia's Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communication. And the third track is all about getting inspired by nature in terms of architecture. That's going to take place in this floor at the main exhibition hall. And that's going to be chaired by Helena Bjarnegård. She's the National Architect of Sweden from the National Board of Housing, Building and Planning. So I hope that you each will find an inspirational track and that you can really participate online or on site. But before the tracks will actually start, we will hear very important messages and greetings from Forest by Antti Kurvinen, Minister of Agriculture and Forestry of Finland. And this all will take place in 45 minutes. That is 12:45 Eastern European time, local time, and 11:45 Central European time. But now I recommend that you take a refreshing break, stretch your legs, enjoy lunch, and those on-site attendees, you can reach the lunch by the upper and lower entrance of the auditorium. So see you in 45 minutes in the woods. Welcome back from the track. Let us continue our path deeper into the woods. So now we will start the session, which will consist of 3 different tracks, and they all will be opened by important words and greetings from the forest. And after that, the online audience will then select which track to follow from the website. So let's begin the panel discussion part, the 3 tracks, with greetings from the forest. I would like to invite to the podium Minister for Agriculture and Forestry, Antti Kurvinen. Please, Minister, the stage is yours.
distinguished guests, Your Excellencies, I'm delighted to see so many of you here at this very special event, and that you come from so many different countries and organizations, which mean that you represent a great number of perspectives on questions related on the new European Bauhaus initiative. I'm also very happy that we are holding this event in these beautiful surroundings here in Nuuksio, and especially that we are holding this event in this really tremendous wooden building. We all know that wood can be used for a wide variety of materials and end uses. As a material, wood has many positive qualities. However, we rarely even think about how many products or processes already make use of wood or wood fibers. For example, medicines, chemicals, textiles, cosmetics, and fertilizers are just a few examples. I have to say that I was surprised to hear just recently about one new, really interesting wood-based innovation. Could we have imagined a few years ago that we would now be using wood-based materials to make batteries? In my view, we still haven't seen everything wood has to offer. Quite the opposite. I believe that in the future we will find even more versatile uses for wood, and we will see many innovations in this area. Although we have a long tradition of wood construction in Europe, we can certainly develop new solutions for using wood-based materials in construction too. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you have already heard several times today about how important forests and the forest sector are for Finland. For more than 100 years now, the key principle in Finland has been to ensure that forests are sustainably managed for generations to come. To ensure this, we emphasize the principle of sustainable forest management and all its dimensions. One example is that our forest legislation always requires regeneration after final felling. Correspondingly, we take long-term measures to promote biodiversity and protect our forests. As you have probably noticed, even here in the capital region, we are surrounded by forests. Just half an hour from the airport or the center of Helsinki, we are here in the middle of the forest. As forests are part of everyday life, it's no wonder that we discuss our objectives related to forests and forest management very actively here in Finland. We have an active debate on forest management and harvesting volumes, protection and ways to safeguard biodiversity, and the role of forests in climate change mitigation. Recent events in Europe have sadly reminded us Finns of our own reconstruction phase after World War II in the 1940s and 1950s. At that time, domestic raw materials, wood in particular, played an important role in renewing the Finnish economy and society. Precisely in those decades, we also began to see a real boost in the development of the Finnish forest industry. When it comes to forestry, we are also facing new challenges. In particular, climate change is forcing us to adapt forest management to changing conditions, such as droughts and storms. Preventing forest damage and safeguarding the health and growth of forests are key issues throughout Europe. At the same time, successful forest management involves working towards several objectives at once. To name a few, we must find a balance between fostering forest biodiversity, offering recreation opportunities, enhancing carbon sinks, and providing raw material for wood products. In Finland, the sector also continues to be of a great economic importance. With all this in mind, it is hardly surprising that the goals related to forest and forest management are sometimes contradictory and difficult to reconcile. I've been serving as a Minister of Agriculture and Forestry for 7 months now. Discussion on forests in particular has been very active in recent months in Finland. Certain EU legislative initiatives have also had a strong impact on the debate. The core question seems to be, how can we sustainably manage our natural resources while conserving biodiverse ecosystems? I believe that these events, such as today's event, provide a great opportunity to discuss the different objectives regarding forests and wood-based bioeconomy in Europe. In this context, I would also like to mention that next Tuesday, 29th November, in Brussels will be held two events entitled Forests and the Wood-Based Bioeconomy Beyond the Biobubble. The events are organized by Finnish European Parliament member Elsi Katainen and Academy of Finland research flagships. You are warmly welcome to discuss the topical policies and regulations affecting forestry and bio-based materials in Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, the construction sector has plenty of opportunities to mitigate climate change. Emissions from construction can be easily reduced by using renewable materials, such as wood. I am therefore pleased to see that so much progress has already been made in wood construction. In recent years, it has been a great pleasure to visit several daycare centers and schools that are successful examples of wooden buildings in a public use. Feedback from children and teachers are often very, very positive because wooden buildings have good indoor air and acoustics. The construction sector has shown that the transition towards low-carbon building and housing is really possible. However, the share of renewable materials can be increased further, and on the other hand, improving cost effectiveness is still important. In Finland, the discussion on increasing the use of wood in construction often focuses on public construction and multi-story buildings. This is understandable because they have a greatest potential if you look at the construction volumes. However, I'm pleased to let you know that in my own ministry, in the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, we are also actively seeking opportunities to increase the use of wood in transport infrastructures, such as bridges. Correspondingly, we are carrying out development work on wooden farm structures. From this perspective, increasing the use of wood in construction is linked to the vitality of rural areas. Furthermore, we are making efforts to increase the amount of expertise in the sector by producing learning materials on wood structures and wood products. In short, while promoting wood products and wood construction, we are also discovering cost-competitive material solutions that leverage the natural properties of wood. I would also like to mention that in Finland, the promotion of wood construction is a good example of excellent cooperation between ministries. Correspondingly, I believe that cooperation between EU member states would certainly be useful, and I hope that we could increase this cooperation. For example, in exchanging information about best practices. Dear friends of forests, wood construction and architecture, thank you all once again for coming to Finland. I hope you had so far had a productive and thought-provoking day, and I hope your lively discussion continues. I'll be going to a stone building to the Parliament of Finland, and I wish you a fruitful journey into the woods. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you very much, Minister Kurvinen, and good luck with your voyage to the stone building. Hope you make wise decisions there. Now it's time to go into the tracks. For our online audience, please select your preferred track from the website. And I kindly ask the chairs of the tracks in each of the locations now to start the tracks. Let's get on with that. And we will get back to here into the main event at 2:15 local time, 1:15 Central European time.
So dear guests here in Haltia and audience online, now we start this panel concentrating on forests. Today we have already heard many interesting aspects related to transformation of land use sector and the connections of it to other sectors. Here we concentrate on forest, as I said. I am Tuomo Kallioksi from Ministry of Environment, Climate Change Unit, and I will facilitate this discussion. And let me firstly introduce our panelists. So I start from left. Siis Viveka Beckeman is the Director General for the Swedish Forest Industries, a trade organization representing the pulp and paper industries, as well as the world working industries in Sweden. She is a lawyer as an education. And beside her is sitting Professor Avelina Helm. She is Professor of Restoration Ecology at the University of Tartu, Estonia, where she leads the Landscape Biodiversity Research Group. Her research focuses on the land use impacts on biodiversity, ecosystem functions, and services. She is also an expert of the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystems, IPPES. And then our next female panelist is Hanna Aho. She works as a climate policy officer in Finnish Association for Nature Conservation, the largest national environmental NGO. She has background in ecology and evolutionary biology and focuses on policies covering natural carbon sinks. And last but not the least is the Sven Walter. He is Senior Forestry Officer in United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. Currently he leads the work streams of the Forestry Division on the forest-based bioeconomy, forest food and nutrition and livelihoods. And he has also extensive experience on land degradation neutrality questions. And as you see, our title for this panel is very, very wide. Future forest. We could discuss whatever we want, I think. But we have already heard today that forests are facing enormous pressure. They should be part of solution on multiple crises, if not the solution. We should be able to increase carbon stocks, enhance biodiversity, and with simultaneously increasing harvests for renewable materials and energy. And today in this panel we try to touch all of these topics and try to provide some future prospects. I have prepared a couple of slides. Hopefully this works. No, not this way. So here I want to show you some historical trends of land use sector and forests and some numbers related to that sector. So in upper left you see the LULUCF sector, so carbon sink on land use change and forestry sector. And as you can see, during last 10 years it has clearly decreased. Our carbon sinks are diminishing, as you have heard already today. And then the next of it is the bar graph showing that in same time we have increased forest harvested biomass a lot. Maybe there is a connection between these two graphs. We will hear that about in our panel discussion. And then the left lower row we have a graph showing the added economic value of food manufacturing industry in EU. And as you can see, the value is very high, almost 140 billion euros. And I think this is annual value. And this is only wood manufacturing industry, not including the forest sector as a total. So this sector is really important in EU. We cannot think that we somehow put too much pressure on that sector, blocking the development of it. And then the last graph we have there, it's showing the conservation status of habitats in EU. And very bluntly, 80% of those habitats, conservation status of them is either bad or poor. And again, maybe this is related to other graphs we have there on the slide. From here, I have kind of like a starting point of the discussion. We have together, I and our panelists, prepared a kind of vision where we should be at some point of time. And I'm now going to read this vision aloud. So at some point of time, we should have resilient forest ecosystems, support thriving biodiversity, provide necessary carbon sinks and storages, and other ecosystem services, while renewed forest sector ensures economic and social benefits. That's the vision for this discussion. In a minute, you will hear how panelists are regarding this vision. I have written that down, so I take the responsibility of it. And today in this panel, we may have different viewpoints and opinions on many aspects. I'm just coming from COP27 negotiations. I took from there one message from me. It's about the power of dialogue. Sometimes you have to make difficult compromises just to keep dialogue ongoing. And that means that today, all of us, we had to be constructive. We had to try to find positive turning points of sometimes difficult forest discussions. That, of course, doesn't mean that any of us should do any compromises on scientific facts, because science is the foundation on which we are standing on when we try to catch a glimpse of the future. And now I will join the panelists, and the first question I will... Is this working? Do you hear me? Great. So as a first question for all of you panelists, I would like to hear from you 30-second answer to the question. Please imagine you are in middle of forest. What do you see? And maybe Sven, you can start now here. You are in middle of the forest. What do you see? Please.
First of all, probably I don't see, I smell, I feel. When you go around, you hear the leaves, you walk through it, and you relax, and you get this feeling of arriving. And I think that is what you see, and you don't see it with the eyes, but you feel it basically, when smelling the ground and when touching the trees. So that would be my first impression.
Thank you, Sven. And Hanna, how about you?
That was really beautiful. I think now it is winter, and when I went to a forest last time, I felt the cold, I felt the snow, I felt the winter, and I heard the leaves. There were no birds. It was silent. But of course, I know that the birds will come back at one time. But at that time, they were gone. And that's also sorrow that I felt.
Thank you, Hanna. That was also beautiful. So, Avelina, what you are seeing when you are standing in the middle of forest?
I think what I see is, I try to imagine myself into common Estonian forest. I see the complexity of the interactions and of the networks that have been developed over time, that this forest has developed and grown, and there is a certain ecological curiosity within being developed for a long time. Being ancient is especially valuable, but just being old is also ecologically very valuable. And I have learned to see those things, these complex interactions that develop over time.
Wonderful. Maybe someone would use term ecosystem there. Okay, Viveka, how about you?
Does this work? Yeah. First of all, I'd like to say that I see something very different today from what I would have done 10 years ago when I did not have any knowledge about forestry at all. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would probably just have said trees. But today I can see a lot of love and a lot of thought, and I see all the work that's been put into making that forest as beautiful as it is, because that's something that struck me since I joined the forest industry, not just the federation but the industry as well, that regardless of which perspective you have on forest, the people behind them love the forest and they do what they ultimately think is the best. That's regardless if you work for an NGO or if you work for a forest company. So I see love when I see a forest.
Wonderful. I mean, today we are hearing so much about the feelings, and love is maybe the strongest feeling you can feel. Okay, so let's go to the difficult questions and real stuff of this panel. So I would like to start with you, Avelina. What do you think about this vision we have partly formulated together, and how you see What kind of involvement of forestry this vision is somehow indicating?
Thank you. When I look at the vision and also beforehand, hearing the term sustainability, which does not reflect at the moment here, and maybe it's a good thing because one thing that we definitely need to do is to redefine what we consider sustainability at that very crucial time where we are right now. Because especially in how we manage forests, how we manage landscapes in general, how we look nature and natural resources around us, that we need to start redefining the sustainability so that we also very strongly take the biodiversity and climate into account. I don't think we have done it so far so well as we should. This is reflected in the trends that we see to be honest, everywhere, also here, also in Nordic countries. So redefining also the forest use, the forest management, the landscape use and landscape management so that we take biodiversity and climate necessities into account. We could look at those as kind of ecological boundaries that we have in that's like the walls of our house that we need to keep standing. And it would not be wise from us to go and take our firewood out of the logs of our house, let's say, or the house walls. So these boundaries need to be set so that we respect the house around us. And forests and other thriving ecosystems are part of this house, or they are making this house. And I would strongly emphasize the value of biodiversity that needs to be kind of really put on top because biodiversity gives us the resilience that we need for the future. So to me, the word resilient is tightly connected with biodiversity because when we look at the climate impacts in the future, and actually already now, the more complex systems we have, the more ecological functions we have, the better we are able to withstand everything that is coming towards us. So the science shows that we need to not only address, the climate sink potential, but we need to address the forest ecosystems in spatial scale that fits into landscapes. So I would add also a landscape there, that we need resilient forest landscapes, where we, in a landscape scale, spatially also plan and ensure that we have also all forest ecosystem services, functions, and also ancient and old growth forests within those landscapes, because they provide in these landscapes, exactly in this scale, the biodiversity works there, the people are in a landscape scale. And if we manage to keep our forests connected and we have biodiverse forests in each landscape, then we can ensure also this resilience that we need to also have managed forests, well preserved and good. So this is the part of the vision that I would also like to emphasize, the biodiversity and climate being strongly integrated. Thank you.
Thank you, Avelina. There was so many terms we should still include in this discussion, like landscape and spatiality and old growth forest and so on. But now, Viveka, let me turn to you. You are coming from forest industry, and thus I assume you are thinking the future of forest sector almost on daily basis. And what is your reaction when you see this vision?
First of all, I really like the fact that you have emphasized resilience. You used that as a first word because, like we heard Ursula von der Leyen saying this morning, that regardless on what perspective you have on forestry, healthy forests are key in order for us to deliver on our goals. So I think that's a very good start. I think it's very good that you also have biodiversity as one of the main ambitions, because we definitely need to work more with enhancing and increasing biodiversity. What I'm missing from this vision is the fact that we need to manage our forests in order to be able to use them to replace fossil materials. We heard also this morning that in the next few years we need to provide decent housing for about 2 billion people on this planet. And if we choose to do that with fossil-based materials, we are really endangering the climate even more than we are doing today. But if we use wood-based products, we could actually increase the climate benefit and create a carbon sink. So I think into your vision I would like to add an active forest management, which of course needs to go hand in hand with biodiversity and the other values, such as social values of the forest.
Thank you, Viveka. There's economic and social benefits, but you really emphasize this management of forest, which is kind of like a foundation for this forest industry. Thank you very much. So Sven, how about you? You are coming from FAO, you are looking at the global trends and the bigger picture. How you see this forest-related vision?
Yeah, also as my colleagues, I like the vision because of the multifunctionality of the forest. We can see it here, it is reflected, I think, in the vision which is there. Also when we heard about ecosystems or landscapes, as you mentioned, having healthy productive landscapes, I would like to remind us that we are also in the decade on ecosystem restoration, and that we do have around 1.5 billion hectares of degraded land. And these degraded lands are an opportunity also for us to work on the supply and to create healthy ecosystems on these lands. So that is an opportunity. Even if we heard that the forests are growing in Europe, they are still shrinking globally, like 5 million hectares per year. So there is an urgent action to work. Also, when it comes to the sustainable use side, it is highlighted here in the vision, the sinks and the storages. Also there, I would like to add something. I would like to add the term sequestration, which is an important function of the trees when they are growing. Also the substitution, what we heard. What is the substitution potential for, we talked about cement and concrete. But there's also an issue of supply. How can we ensure the future supply? So I just added 3 S to the other 2 to come up with 5. And of course, there's also the economic aspect there. And we heard a lot about innovation. I think we are in an innovative forest sector, but we need to have the right tree at the right place. And also we need to have the right product, at the right place. So this is something I think we need to keep in mind. And as we just heard, yes, we will be 10 billion people. We will need 3 billion new houses by 2030. So is there any alternative? At least, forest and the forest sector can contribute to address this. I don't think it will be the solution, but I think it's important to know that there is a big opportunity for the sector and also to achieve, for example, climate targets through a stronger engagement in the forest sector, also in the construction sector.
Thank you, Sven. Fascinating. 3S, sequestration, substitution, supply, and these sinks and storages. Lots of the terms to think about. But Hanna, now I turn to you. You are coming from the Nature Conservation Organization. How you see this vision, and maybe you can reflect already what others have said a bit.
I think there are many positive sides to this vision, and it's rather balanced. As you said, it's also already based on a previous discussion that we've had. What I really like about it is that it talks about necessary carbon sinks. Nobody is saying carbon sinks should do more than they share, but they need to do their share in climate mitigation, and we need them. They are necessary. We cannot manage without them. And the other part is on biodiversity. Actually, I would like to talk about not just resilient, but just biodiverse forests, because that is what we need. Our forests at the moment, they are not biodiverse. They are very one-sided, to say. And we need them to be more biodiverse. We need to enhance biodiversity from where we have ended up with. And I think this metaphor about a house, it's great because all the material good, all the economic benefits, social benefits that we can get from forest, they need to be inside the limits of nature. And that those limits are the necessary carbon sinks that we need and the biodiversity. That is the foundation of all life. And at the moment, we are not doing this. We are far from it. We all come from countries, Finland, Sweden, Estonia, where carbon sinks are diminishing rapidly. Biodiversity is not doing well. So I don't think we are from countries that are doing enough. And there has been a lot of talk about wood products, building from wood, like this beautiful house. But building from wood, it doesn't make any sense if the harvesting levels are too high, if the ways that we manage forests are so intense that carbon stocks diminish and biodiversity is not doing well. So I think we need to really look at how much we use, that we need to make higher value, more profit, more jobs from less raw materials. And there is the big conflict. But this is necessary because otherwise we will never meet the climate targets that we have. We will never meet the biodiversity targets. And we know that if we don't meet them, how dangerous that is for all life. Thanks.
Thank you, Hanna. So you already touched this kind of like a core of discussion or most difficult one. So where we are now and where we are, what kind of future we are facing. So we have vision there, and I showed you some graphs where we are now. And I didn't put any date on this vision, and that was purposefully. So I would like to hear from you now what you see here. It seems that all of us are sharing this vision quite much, a little bit adding something and a little bit taking out maybe there, but we are agreeing mostly on it. So when we could reach that vision, when you think about the situation where we are now, could anyone give any idea, like is it 2030, 2050 or later? Now, who wants to say something?
I can start. Yes, I think the timescales are actually very relevant to bring up, and I think we can have very sustainable. If we manage to be inside our house and keep our house walls intact regarding climate and biodiversity, we can have a very sustainable bioeconomy over long timescales. But we are also looking at the next 2 decades, next 3 decades, which are absolutely crucial for getting the carbon out of the atmosphere and turning this planet into more sustainable path out of this horrible future path that we saw this morning that might be when we fail. And we can't fail, so the next decades are absolutely crucial. So these amounts of carbon that come out of the, let's say, burning wood are the same carbon for atmosphere that heats the planet. So also very rapid transition from burning wood to other energy sources that would be more sustainable from sun and from wind. There is absolutely crucial necessity for that to stop using bioenergy in such scales as we do it right now, bioenergy out of wood. And because right now the forests, all of the science shows, our local reports in the countries where we come from show that the best climate benefits come from already growing tree, and thus kind of this balancing the harvesting levels so that we are in this Goldilocks zone where we have the thriving economy and kind of innovations within, but limiting ourselves into these volumes that we won't put this carbon up in the air so much from the bioenergy as well. So this is absolutely crucial over next decades. So I think the vision needs to be kind of transformed quickly over next years, and then kind of work towards the long-term goals. Yes. This is
okay. Thank you, Avelina, very much for putting us on the scale of the time what we are facing. So maybe we will move forward on basis of that. And before I give you another question, I would like to announce this. We have also 2 Slido questions for online and also online audience and guests here. So maybe the first one could be asked now, if you are not, or if you have not yet answered it already. So first Slido question, please. And then during audiences, when you are answering, we can discuss on the second one. And the question now, when I'm listening to you, I think that mostly we are agreeing that we should see some kind of like transformation or change in the forest sector. So Viveka, how you see, what is the role of current forest sector business model in the long term? This is a tough question, I know, but we have to face this kind of like, if we want to have a change, we have to acknowledge what is the role of the business model we have now.
I think that the current business model that we are using, at least in the Nordics and I think the Baltics, could be the basis for the future. I mean, when we harvest a tree, we strictly adhere to the cascading principle. I mean, we use the fillet for building materials, and then what can't be used for building materials is used for pulp and paper production, where we produce packaging which substitutes fossil-based materials, and what can't be used for packaging is used for instance, biofuels. So I think that principle could be a foundation on which we could move forward into the future. But obviously we need to develop and we need to find new uses of the forests while still always keeping in mind that we use it in the most efficient way. But I'm sure that we've heard today mentioned that you will be able to, we are in the process of being able to use forest-based components in batteries, for instance. I think we are going to find so many more uses, and we also need to make sure that we use as much as possible for long-lived products. So we need to develop techniques whereby we can use more and more in products where we store carbon. So I think we need to constantly develop. And then we must work on circularity. We must be even better at reusing the material that has been produced. Today, when it comes to packaging, we have relatively high levels of recycling. We are about 80% in Europe. But when it comes to building materials, the level of recycling is appallingly low. So we need to design and build in order for us to be able to dismantle and reuse the materials. So I think we can use the foundation, but we need to develop.
Thank you very much. And I would like to hear from Sven, continuation on this topic, how you see the business model, the future of it.
Yes. Let me also link this to the previous question on the time frame, because I think, we have a momentum, we need to act. So actually I would like to keep the discussion for the time being within the SDG framework as an important milestone. I think we need to show that we can have impact, and then we can build from there. I think that's something where the forest sector can contribute to it, and that will also link to the new business model. It must be a business model which supports the transformative change and which contributes to create carbon neutral societies. I think we heard already when we mentioned the bioenergy, one key aspect related to the circularity is, for example, to further enhance the cascading use of forest products, to use forests in the most efficient way and to add value as much as possible. And that means to focus on long-living forest products and also work on better capturing and also quantifying, for example, the carbon storage potential of these wood products. And that would also then imply that the forest sector has even a stronger contribution when it comes to discussions on climate change, targets. So when we have on NDCs, I think we can even see more the contribution of the forest and of the private sector in reaching the targets, because what we want to see is that the forest sector is actually part of a solution to achieve these targets and not part of a problem.
Okay, thank you, Sven. And maybe we should now see the answers, responses of audience to the first Slido question. So the question was, how do you see the situation of social license for the forest sector in the EU? And you can see that the first one of the options, there's no social license for the continuance of the business as usual, is getting 50% of audience. And then the other one is social license for forest sector is strong, but it may face challenges. And only 20% thinks that it's in good condition just now. Any reactions? Maybe Hanna, you can start on this.
Yeah, I think myself that the social license for the current model is very low. There is no future for the current role, so to say. In Finland, we already see from polls that people think that harvesting levels should go down for us to meet our climate targets. They want more nature protection. They want to safeguard old growth forest and fast. And they want us to switch from rotation period forestry and clear cuts to continuous cover forestry. This is really clear. I think we should also respect that. While the forestry sector currently violates the boundaries of nature, it also violates the boundaries of social acceptance. And this is where we need a big transformation.
Thank you, Hanna. And now I would like to get some questions or comments from audience on the discussion we have had so far in the panel. We have serious difficulties to see you, but I see some hand there. Lady there, I don't see. Yep, please.
This is on. Okay, hello everybody. My name is Mai Suominen. I come from WWF Finland. Thank you, first of all, for the organizers. It has been a really wonderful day with all the discussions, and thank you, panelists. I would like to bring us to the time scale. You are all pointing out really important issues, and the first word in your vision, or our shared vision on resilient forests. How do you see, if we come back to what the forests look like today? In Finland, the forest habitat types have been evaluated in terms of how endangered they are. And we know from 2018 that 76% of Finnish forest habitat types are endangered. And this means that the forest structure has been simplified, and it ends up in a situation that the forest processes are not resilient to respond to the changes that the climate change is bringing us. Insect outbreaks, drought, more rainfall, and so forth. So now maybe I would like to point this question mostly to forest industries. In the Nordic countries, most of the forest production is based on pulp production, and that because of that, we manage the forest in a way that we do the thinnings and at the end the clear cutting in order to get a lot of these small-sized trees from the forest. And as a result, I will finish soon, we have really young forests that are simplified, just 1 or 2 tree species that are even aged in their size. So how do you see if we should act fast in order to get the time scale or the forest develop to a better condition in, let's say, 50 years? What can we do with the forest production in order to also make the management look different?
Thank you for this question and comment, and please keep your comments and questions short. Time is flying. And we have another question from our keynote speaker, Professor Snellhuber.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm listening to the panel with, does it work? Yeah, no. With great attention, and you are reflecting in a way what the type of discussion we have in every country right now, of course. You have conflicting interests, and we expect the forest to deliver just everything, and that is probably not possible. But let me make just 3 comments, and maybe they can be converted into questions as well. First of all, you mentioned the resilience thing, and that's very important. Clearly, we just did a conference at the Pontifical Academy in Rome on resilience, and the problem is there are clearly limits to resilience. Even if we keep all our forests and the climate would change by 3 or 4 or 5 degrees, the forest couldn't save us. They would perish together with us. So we need to keep global warming to a limit where all creatures on Earth can survive. And that is, in my view, below 2 degrees and ultimately at 1 degree. So that's the first thing. The second, and I think that's the answer to most things, is that we need an integrated approach, a compromise approach. And in terms of geometry, I think it's something like a mosaic approach. So in Germany, we think about it. You have many forest areas owned by private people, 2 or 3 hectares. They are not really economic values in the sense. You could leave them completely sort of fallow for biodiversity, yeah? And people could even be honored for doing that. But other parts, well-managed state forests, for example, they can create economic value. And in the Bavarian state forest, biodiversity has actually gone up because of sustainable management. So if you look at the whole landscape with small and big and intermediate parcels and cells, an integrated approach, embracing complexity, could do the job. People always try to shy away from complexity because it's complex, but I think we have to embrace complexity to find a good compromise for the various conflicts here. And finally, something I tried to show in my talk also in the morning is the timescale, in my view, Vision 20XO. I think you have to eliminate the first 0. The vision is 2200, more or less. In order to fix the problem, the transformation we have imposed on this planet and our civilization can only be healed in 2 or 3 centuries from now. It's a long journey, that's why you have to start now. And of course it would be easy to just leave the forest alone, so for the next 3 decades we could suck up more carbon. And then you will enter climate state and you will nothing gain and nothing lose, so to speak. Yeah? So in order to really make them global carbon sinks, we have to have a long-term strategy. Sorry for being so long.
Thank you very much. And now, firstly, I let Viveka to answer the first question, and then I want to get some reactions from others also.
I obviously only represent the Swedish forest industry, but there are I think the Finnish and the Swedish industries have quite a lot in common. But I actually disagree with you. We do not grow trees for the pulp and paper industry. We grow trees for the woodworking industry. We grow trees which we want to turn into building materials. We only use the residues for the pulp and paper industry and other side streams. In order to grow the trees, we use thinning as a method, and those trees go to the pulp industry, paper pulp industry, but it's not the purpose of the management of the forest. The purpose is to grow building materials. With that said, I think we need to develop our forest management methods. We have been developing them during the last century, and I don't think the forest management that we see today is going to be the same in the next 5 or 10 years as it wasn't 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But I think it's also important to take our history into account. The reason that we have trees of so even age in Sweden and apply the rotation and the clear cutting methods is actually because we started that method in the early last century, and that was actually for biodiversity purposes. They were trying to recreate the natural calamities. It didn't turn out exactly the way they wanted, given biodiversity, because we do have a deficit when it comes to biodiversity. We need to work more actively on that, and we need to develop. But I think we are on a journey. We want to do more when it comes to biodiversity as well.
Thank you, Viveka, for the comprehensive answer. And now, rapid reactions on comments on the timescale Professor Snellhuber said, and also maybe at other issues you noticed there.
May I? Yes. Yes, I wanted to address the possibility for the integration that you so well mentioned. But I think the integration that delivers in optimal levels the necessities that we really have is possible first. But secondly, regarding compromises, I think we have to be very careful how we make compromises, because we can make compromises within ourselves, within the systems that we develop. But it is very hard to make a compromise with an ecological requirements that, for example, species have. We can't say species that, well, we know that the connectivity that you would need, the connectedness of the landscape is such, but we can't ensure it. Please try to confine yourself into smaller habitats and less connected world. This just doesn't work. So we can't go into compromise with nature, and we can't go into compromise with climate. These are the hard targets that we have to meet. And then, but within that target, within that boundary, we have a lot of possibilities to integrate and compromise.
Thank you, Avelina. And now I want to hear Sven, how you react. Short, no, 3 points. Quick, first point, integration, of course. We need the integration. Also looking, forests are part of bigger economic, models, and there's different demands outside. And forest, this needs to be decided at the local level. And when it comes to resilience, we talked here about resilient ecosystems, but I would also put first the people. We need also resilient food systems, and then the forest must contribute to this. So I think that aspect is also, part when we look into the forest production aspect, to put the people into the context. And of course, the last point, when it comes also to the industry and to the processing, we need to see what are the possibilities to reduce the material footprint to become more efficient. We talked about the bow economy. So how can we promote there to reduce, to reuse, and to increase also to recycle? And of course, we have the residual management, which you mentioned, which is also important. So here we can make further progress for a better contribution of the forest sector in a transition to a sustainable bioeconomy. Thank you, wonderful. And now, Hanna, you want to give also your contribution to this discussion.
Yeah, thanks. I want to go back to the timescales, because I think it's really necessary to remember what the IPCC says, that we need to halve global emissions by 2030. And we have only 8 years' time to do this. And when we look at also our biodiversity targets, these are the years that really matter. Of course, the transformation will continue after that as well. We are never in a stable stage. But this is the time that we need the big changes. And when it comes to, for example, substitution effects and forest products, our own climate panel, national climate panel here in Finland, has made several reports. And the latest this year that says that, okay, if we log more forests and make wonderful products out of them, this will not help us, because the substitution effect is weaker than the loss that we see in the sinks, and then we will not meet our targets. So I think we need to be honest and go back to the basics here.
Thank you very much. And now we move to the next question. Time is flying, and during this, when we discuss about the next question, I want to audience answer to the next later question. So if this is not yet open, please open it and then audience can answer on this. So now we have discussed a lot about the vision and the future, and the important question is that how we can get there. And we have also heard already some concrete suggestion for it, but I'm coming from the ministry. So of course I'm looking from perspective of regulation. And now I would like to hear from your panelists how you see the development of EU level regulation and measures in context of forests. This morning we already heard several proposals. We are still discussing them, and this commission has given many proposals. And I would like to hear from you how you see them and how you see the future of development of EU regulation. And now, floor is open. Who wants to start? Viveka, please.
First of all, I'd like to say that I think it's very good that the European Commission has ambitious visions, and I think we need to do this together because there are really no country boundaries when it comes to climate change. But having said that, I think it would be beneficial if the Commission had the ambition to set more overarching targets, and then leave it to the respective member companies to implement the regulations, because the conditions vary so much. You can't compare a forest in Sweden or Finland or Estonia to a forest in France, for instance. So I think it's good that we have ambitions, shared ambitions, and that we set ambitious targets, but the countries need to make the legislations themselves, and then we need to involve the scientists. Because at the moment we have scientists saying this and then we have scientists saying that. We need to get the scientists together and to address the conflicts of interest.
Thank you very much. Science is never ready, and scientific discussion will continue forever. I can tell that because I have scientific background myself. But now, Avelina, maybe you can continue on this topic. So, role of regulation and development of the EU regulation.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think the EU is on a very right track, and also this event today is very, very positive and uplifting, I would say, regarding the future. But I would also emphasize that there is a kind of rapid and very strong need to diversify the regulations, or diversify the kind of economic incentives that people or forest users or landscape users in Europe have. So I very strongly welcome the new nature restoration law that would help us also to meet these crucial biodiversity and climate issues, or address them. But it also needs to be complemented, the bioeconomy and the landscape use and the habitat restoration. It needs to be accompanied with the right incentives to people to really value also those things that we have not monetarily valued so far, and to create additional benefits for land users, for people in the forests, in the grasslands, in the wetlands, to hold them, to keep them, and value different things. And so also non-wood products from the forests can be brought up more, and then I would very strongly emphasize the role of innovation and science, as pointed out here as well. As Hanna put it, we need the forest industry to do more with less product, and so this needs to be addressed as well and incentivized.
Thank you. So implementation on respecting local conditions and the new opportunities from forests. I got this from Viveka and Avelina. So Hanna and Sven, very short, rapid reactions on this also from you.
Well, I think the proposals by the Commission regarding forest have been positive and justifiable, but they are way not ambitious enough. And from the history, the EU is not moving fast enough. We need higher and ambitious and clear targets on carbon sinks for the EU and all member states. And I'm not seeing this. I think what is really positive about the LULUCF regulation that has been now under review is that it for the first time recognizes the role of biodiversity and do no harm principle. This is a start. It's like a minimum that we need to have. Also looking at the deforestation regulation on the products that we use and so forth. This is very positive. But as I said, I think the thing is that we want products from forests and we think there's a market for them, but there's never going to be a sustainable market for products that come from countries that crash their carbon sinks and biodiversity. And I think that you can do way more. We are a strong community and we can make a difference.
Thank you, Hanna. Credibility and accountability I got from your talk. So Sven, how you see this?
Probably we can all do more, but also this event shows that there's a strong commitment. And that's a strong commitment at the European level, but also when we look into the new European Bauhaus, it is in Europe and beyond. And so that means we need really a global partnership in order to move ahead and to have an impact. I think from the European perspective, looking into the EU forest strategy, we see this strong commitment to the bioeconomy and to promote renewable products like forest products, and that include, as we just heard, and also this morning, like honey and mushrooms, so also non-wood forest products. Now, when it comes to deforestation, we should not forget that probably 90% of the deforestation actually comes from outside the forestry sector. It comes from agriculture. So we need to have a holistic approach to also engage with other sectors on this. And I mentioned already the restoration, so I will not further comment on this. But I would like to make one reference to what Ursula von der Leyen said this morning. It is the link to the EU forest partnerships, because that is then the mechanism which is important for us as FAO, which links the politics of the EU with other countries. And there I think we have the possibility through these global partnerships, to have a real impact, because otherwise, of course, there is a risk that if you change something in one region, there might be then a shift and leakage to other regions. So we must have this global view and we shouldn't forget about this.
Thank you, Sven, for us to reminding us this like a global scale. EU is not like alone into somewhere, but we are connected to other parties also. So maybe we could get the results of this lead on now and we could discuss on them. So the question was, do you see a need for new monetary measures in steering forest use towards higher sustainability? And yes is obviously the answer, but how? And it seems that the polluter pays principle is the first option. And the second one is that we increase direct subsidies for conservation programs like Metso in Finland. And only 17% of audience thinks that there's no need for new monetary measures. So short reactions and maybe we start from Hanna this time.
I'm really happy to see the reaction. I definitely think that on top of the targets, we need monetary measures. I would like to see also a polluter pay principle to be used at the forest sector. So when you release carbon, you need to pay for that. Thanks.
Thank you. Avelina, how you see how audience responds to those questions, and do you want to add something on top of that?
I agree that actually the incentives should be both ways. So kind of enforcing positive things that we want to achieve via subsidies, and then taxing and enforcing the negative aspects. So the only question is yes, both of those top ones.
Do you want to say something, Viveka, on those? How you see them from the industry perspective?
I think it's very interesting to see, and I think that most of us agree that incentives are more efficient than direct regulations, because, like it was mentioned earlier, a lot of the forest is owned by private individuals, and I think we get much better results if we have incentives in place.
And Sven?
Yes. No, just to echo, we need incentives, monetary or others. We need to find, what are the mechanisms also that we can reach out to the consumers. I mean, we want to reach out to them. It's not only the sustainable production, but also a sustainable consumption. And there we need to see what are the best mechanisms to have really the biggest impact.
Thank you. And now I would like to open floor again for audience for the questions or comments. I see the chair of climate change panel there from Finland. Do you want to say something about the measures, how we can regulate these? Like we have heard that there's need for regulate the harvest level maybe, or do you have something to say about these monetary measures?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you inviting me to talk. I didn't have my hand up. But actually we had these within the heated negotiations in COP, we had some discussions on this issue. Actually, we need to think, if we need to maintain zinc, and if we need to promote biodiversity, then we really need to create incentives on that. And thinking of what incentives would perform best, I would say that, okay, there's a difference. We need different type of instruments for biodiversity promotion and different type of incentives for carbon sinks. But there are lots of possibilities. I don't say which is good, but we could regulate harvesting by having traditional regulation concerning harvesting. So we could have minimum diameter size or minimum age requirements for final felling in our forest legislation. That would immediately increase the minimum size or age of trees. That's traditional regulation. But alternatively, given that the demand is very high currently for forest products, we could also start to guide the choice of forest industry towards more sustainable products by having, for instance, a carbon tax on the carbon emissions, CO2 emissions that come out from harvested trees. That would mean then that the trees should be used much more carefully and to the best products. We are currently in the situation where there's lots of demands for variety of goods, but we should pick up the best outcomes. And having this type of tax would then, of course, impact on the choices. The third option relates to what has been said about positive incentives. It relates to subsidies for carbon sequestration. If we pay for carbon sequestration to landowners, that means that they would kind of grow the forest older, even though that would be voluntary, and there's nothing that guarantees that the final outcome is positive, because carbon leakage stays through those forests that are not participating in the voluntary system. Most radical approach is, of course, of having a cap and trade system on the CO2 released from harvesting, where all forest companies would be part of. And that would for surely give the cap, and by that allow us to achieve the level of zinc that we want to have. So lots of possibilities, but I guess that this is something that member states should discuss, because I think that there are ideas in each country, and having this type of discussion would be very useful.
Thank you, Markku, and thank you for mapping out for us those different options to have new measures how to regulate the forest and land use sector also. I think that this discussion will continue later on. But there is hand up, please. I cannot see who is there, so just.
My name is Okay, my name is Karuna Niemi and I represent the Finnish Forest Industries Federation. First, I would like to thank the discussion in the panel. We have talked a lot about forest-based products, and today mostly about those wood used in construction. But I would have a clear question to the panelists. If we can't use wood, for example, for clothes or batteries or packaging material and so on, all these products we are now making from wood or from other materials, which are mainly fiber-based materials, and also those which are really related to chemicals extracted from wood. So if we can't use wood for those, what is the possible material compensating wood, because we should get rid of fossil-based materials. I think we all agree that. And then about LULUCF counting, so there is Mr. Ollikainen. So I think we have the LULUCF regulation from the EU, so let's believe in that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carola, for the tough question. Just to remind the audience that today we heard that 50% of harvested wood biomass in EU is burnt as a bioenergy at the end of the day, and then some 70% of harvested wood is used for short-living products. So I think personally there's lots of room for increasing the life cycle of products in forest sector. But now, panelists, you can answer to the. So maybe Avelina, you seems to be eager to start. So. You can start.
Not really eager, but yes, I think nobody here has stated that we shouldn't use wood, none in this panel nor in this event as a whole. But it would not be very wise to use so much wood that we indeed take logs out of our house on the walls of our house. So that is why we are talking about the sustainable use, and definitely there is room for that, for batteries and everything. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that we have heard already new opportunities also in this. So Viveka, please go on.
I agree with Carolina that we should use wood. Of course, we should use it as efficiently as possible, but we need to phase out fossil products.
Yeah, anything to add from Sven or Hanna?
No, I mean, it must be sustainable, it should be effective, but of course we need to monitor also the supply side. So we need to see, what is the offer we get from the forest? Do we need additional resources? Do we need additional forest, additional planted forest? I mean, that's something we need to have on the radar when we are, promoting the sustainable use, which of course, as we said, can contribute to the bioeconomy, and I think it should contribute.
I'd just say that it's really about the volumes, as stated before. It's about the volumes that we use for energy and for other things. And of course, at the end of the day, we need to look at how also the consumption side and how much we use. We overconsume natural resources at the moment, and this is the big challenge that really needs to change. And only by facing that can we also bring the use of wood products to a level that is sustainable.
Thank you, Hanna. Viveka, you want to react on that?
Yes, I just wanted to. First of all, I agree. I could definitely reduce my consumption, but I don't think most people in India, for instance, or in Bangladesh can reduce their consumption. So I think if we have a global perspective, we need to make sure that other people can get the welfare that they need. And that has to be fossil-free. But yes, we need to use the resources as efficiently as possible. And we in the richer worlds, we definitely needed to review and rethink our consumption. But on a global level, that will not solve the problem.
Okay, I want to thank you panelists for the discussion. We could continue forever, I think, but I would like to give you one last chance, one sentence. Now you are again in the middle of the forest. What you see now, we are in the year 2070. What kind of forest do we have there? Sven, please start.
I still, feel it, but I get a bit nervous now because I know that time is running. And so I hope that we can continue to use that forest in which I am in a sustainable way. But we need to speed up action in order to keep that forest as it is or to improve it.
Thank you. Hanna, please.
I can just say that I will be a very old lady and be lucky to be there. And if there is a forest where I can hear the birds sing and see the mushrooms and taste the berries and see my grandchildren run, I will be the happiest person on earth.
I would also expect that we have, met all those challenges that we have, and we can stand also in the forest where there are old trees, there are oak trees that support more than 400 species all together as well, and all those species are there in 2070.
Since we're running out of time, I'd just like to echo Hanna. I think your picture is very beautiful. I'd like to be in your forest.
And with that, I want to wrap up our panel discussion. Thank you for the lively discussion. And 3 home take messages. We need shared vision. we need transformative change also in land use sector, and we need to agree on the measures and means how we can get that change. Thank you for audience following us, and thank you for panelists. And let's give big hand for all of us. And I want to announce that program will continue here in main auditorium at 2:15.
Welcome back, dear audience, online and on site. I really hope you had inspiring discussions, and I hope that you all gained new views and inspiration to forestry, to construction, and to architecture. Now it's time to wrap up the panel discussions and hear a brief summary of what was said. All the panel discussions shall be available through the website of nordicbauhaus.eu after the event. So even though if you were able to follow just one of the tracks, you can go and check the contents of the other tracks later on. But now I would kindly ask the chairpersons of the panels to take seats here, and let's go through the key contents of the panel discussions, please. So Tuomo, if you can sit here, and Helena and Veronica here. So, 3 tracks, a brief time for 3 very big topics: forestry, architecture, carbon neutral building and living. I hope it was inspirational. And I'd like you to crystallize in just couple of minutes the summary of what was just said. I know that maybe it's still about to take shape, but what's your gut feeling at the moment? Shall we take from Veronica, then Helena, and then Tuomo?
Well, again, good afternoon to everyone that I haven't greeted yet, but of course it's difficult to wrap up an hour of discussion where we had 4 panelists in discussion with the audience, and it was quite fascinating how the conversation went through all these very complex issues, and maybe to highlight just a couple of them that are worthwhile keeping in mind while we talk about carbon neutral building and living by 2050. That was our track theme. Is I guess, well, one of the key points was made by Alan, and I think Alan might be much better here wrapping up the whole discussion that we had, but reminding us of our approach to economic viability. That what is it that we really talk about? That when we talk about the economic viability or construction costs or cost in general, that what do we mean, and what are the values when we talk about these things? So also keeping in mind the short span, the long time span, and how we really want to perceive the future, and then what's the gain or net benefit in the end. So that's kind of one of the key points. But maybe we can kind of go make a tour de table, and then I can return with some other points that were raised in discussion.
Yes, I think it's nice that you point to the economic side of the equation that hasn't been so much referred to today. For instance, Club of Rome has been frequently reminding us that we should reconsider the economic systems that are, running the show, that's not having maybe that merry ending at the moment, it seems. Shall we go to Helena's track, which was about architecture inspired by nature?
Yeah, architecture inspired by nature. And we're talking about innovations and the need to go from best practice to next practice, but also in order to move forward that we need to look backward and to the side. And we have a lot to learn from history, actually. And using wood, we have old traditions in how to use wood and how to use wood in a very efficient way when we look at old building traditions. We didn't have unlimited resources of wood in historical times, so we learned to use wood in a very efficient way, in a very good way, and a way that you could adapt and make last and use again and so on. And also when we look at nature, we can see the same thing. Honeycomb structure, a construction that doesn't need so many resources, but it's very strong. And to simplify the use of materials so that we can use them over and over again. And we got into, need to look at my paper a little bit, to recycling, of course, and circularity. And one of the absolute most important thing is to use the already built environment in a better way. And also when we build new houses and landscapes and interiors and city planning, to think flexibility and adaptability from the start, of course. And we also saw that architecture is so much more than buildings. It's city planning and landscape architecture, interior design, and we need to think diversity, and that's a way to also be inspired by nature, to think diverse. And then we got into beautiful architecture. Beautiful, that is beautiful for your eyes, of course, but also for your body and your soul. And how really the words that European Bauhaus describes, the values that European Bauhaus has in them, sustainable and beautiful and inclusive, how they all fit together, because something is beautiful when it's sustainable and inclusive for all. That was one of the conclusions that we had. So, well, we can come back to some final words later on, but that was about.
Yeah. What I feel interesting in this is that you mentioned landscape architecture. That's another thing that hasn't been mentioned today, at least I haven't heard that so much. And just recently, yesterday, with my discussions with Avelina Helm from Tartu University, I learned that actually the human influence on landscapes seems to be rather long. So after the Ice Age already, the different, like early, and especially in the advent of agriculture, the human touch to landscape is there, and it can be traced back. And now that we are looking at what sort of traits we will be leaving to the landscape way forward into the future because of the Anthropocene and because of the actions that we are doing, it really makes you think that what sort of legacy do we want to leave on the sort of like planetary logbook? Tuomo, how did your forestry track go? What sort of summaries would you bring to the audience?
Thank you, Matti. And first of all, we didn't discuss about forestry. We discussed about the forest ecosystems, forestry, and the forest sector as a whole. So I think that we covered kind of like maybe even overlapped a little bit with other tracks. So first of all, forest ecosystems, we discussed a lot about the planetary boundaries. So planetary logbook, how we can avoid the situation where we are kind of like crashing possibilities to have a bright future in front of us. That's one of the home take messages. We cannot like, there are kind of like some points which if we cross them, we cannot go back. And that's something we have to respect when we speak about the forest use and the impact of it. And the forestry part, there was a lot of discussion what kind of impact nowadays we have with forestry and what kind of forestry we should have in the future. And then the forest sector, we agreed that it provides so much for us nowadays that of course no one is suggesting that we should somehow stopping utilizing forest or forest use, but we cannot continue as we are doing now. So business as usual is not something like way forward. We agree that we have to have like shared vision, what kind of future we want to see. That's kind of like starting point. And then we have to be able to find measures or regulation or whatever, the means how we can reach that vision. But of course, one important point there is the time scale. We can agree on the vision, but then we can be somehow a little bit disagreed with audience at least on the time scale when we could reach. Our keynote speaker pointed out that maybe this what is ongoing already, and I'm referring to climate change, it will have impacts like hundreds of coming of years. So it means that what we do now, it won't stop this change, but it may have impact on next 100 years. So the question was that mainly like how we can implement the change in such a way that the social license for a sector, which seems to be, based on the question for audience, it seems to be not in so good condition just now. So that's like kind of like a strategic question for us, for all of us, if we are representing industry or policymakers or whatever. So how we can make a change in such a way that those forest owners, forest institutions, they can be on board, and also the whole society is feeling that we are going the right direction. But then it means, of course, that the science, we referred many times to the science and scientific background, like that's the basis of everything. We cannot make any compromises on those scientific facts also in forest sector. But okay, I let room for others and we can continue the discussion on this.
Yeah, the importance of timely action. That's what I'm hearing. And of course, the difficulty of sufficient timely action. That's upon us. Veronica, you wanted to comment?
Yes, I wanted to comment precisely on that, because we also talked about the very short time span in a way that we really need to act now, that we don't actually have 50 years or 30 years, not even, but we really should act now, as all the construction projects well, they do take time to be completed. So if we want to be anywhere, let's say in 10 years' time, then we need to act now. And another very good point that Tuomo, you brought up is the question of research and really building scientific evidence to what we are doing and explaining through that what we are doing, and then really demonstrating that what we are doing really is making a difference. We talked also about reskilling, that how do we kind of use the existing skills and then kind of divert the way they are used in other areas. And we also talked about tipping points of markets, that how much do we need to do as fast as possible before there is this opportunity for it to become kind of mainstream, or to kind of for it to scale up. So.
Yes, Helena.
We also talked about time, as you two did, and especially time as long-lasting buildings. And that's the most important thing that we should think of here now. How can the buildings that we build right now, how can they be long-lasting? Through adaptability, through good constructions, through good use of materials, but also by making them beautiful, so that people will love and cherish those buildings for ages and be willingly maintaining them for generations to come. And that the long-lasting building, that must be the most important goal to set up. And then we have lots of way to reach this, of course.
I'll give a comment to Veronica and Tuomo, and then we will have a final surprise round.
It's the lifespan of a building. That's a great topic, to keep in mind. But Alan also in our panel brought up, I think, the longevity of a material. That after the building life has ended, what happens to the material, and how to turn waste into an asset. That how to well, we had the whole one whole conversation about reuse, refill, also regeneration, and so forth. So I think it's also a thing to consider, especially keeping in mind the keynote speech today that was talking about we entering a biomaterial era? What does it mean? That how does it, where does it end up? How is it reused, and so forth? Thanks.
Yeah, I would like to continue this discussion about this change and how to impose it. So we were discussing also these incentives against taxes, for example. So carrot and stick discussion we also had. And I think that this is connected to these other tracks very closely, because in forest sector, the question is really like how this forest biomass, how we can get the life cycle of those products so much longer, and also this like a share of the produced products for long living products. It has to be increased very rapidly if we want to see that forest sector is kind of like solving the challenges what we had there now. And that was one of like, I wouldn't like to use term heated discussion, but anyway, we got some like speeding up of the discussion on that point. And we also engage audience for the discussion. And I really like the input we got there. And I mean, it's really important that all voices are heard in this discussion. It's in our countries, forest sector is such a major driver, and like a construction sector, and those two sectors together, they had to work more closely than nowadays, and to be able to find like a good solutions. So this time scale, we had to understand that in terms of climate change, next coming decades are key, but when we make a decision now, we cannot make them hastily, because we do not have time to come back and make another better decision. So that's also like time scale. When we make these decisions, we are in haste, but we have to make wise decisions so that those decisions can last next centuries.
The concept of time again referred to, which leads me to maybe make a Christmas reading tip to the audience. There's an excellent book called On Time and Water by an Icelandic author called Andri Snær Magnason. It's a very touching poetic story about one family's relation to a disappearing glacier in Iceland. So that's a Christmas present tip to maybe, or Christmas reading tip to us all. But now, the surprise round. I'd like to hear if there was anything that surprised you in the panels. I know that you've been sitting in many of these panels where all the typical boxes checked. Recycling, check. Reuse, check. Forestry, conservation, regeneration. Or was there anything that surprised you? Or was the surprise that there wasn't any surprise? How would you describe this? Let's start again from Veronica and then Helena and then Tuomo.
Well, I was surprised by the active engagement of the audience, to be frank, and the very vital questions that were asked. And maybe one of the final ones that kind of popped up, or it was rather a comment, that why are there so few real estate developers or developers in the room? And maybe that's one question that indeed then we started to look around and maybe there is really a disconnection there, or we should engage them more. And another thing that maybe we didn't, that didn't pop up that much, is about this, really about this idea of recycling the building materials and all the waste management and so forth. So maybe, well, that's a topic for another conference, of course. So.
2,000 years ago, one person described architecture as something that is very functional, that is robust, can last for a long time, be sustainable, and is beautiful. And the most surprising thing is that all the architects in the panel thought that it's hard to talk about beautiful. And that is surprising, I think. And I think that's something that we need to change, and we had a very good conversation about it in the panel. Like, it's in the eye of the beholder, and it's very, very, very crucial to sustainability, for example. It's crucial that for a long-lasting building, and it's, craftsmanship and everything that is, in this word for every one of us. And we have it's not hard to talk about economy. it's not hard to talk about efficiency, but it's quite hard to talk about beauty. And I think we need to talk about beauty more, and especially when we combine it with sustainability and inclusiveness.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Being an architect myself as well, I feel that indeed that's maybe it slips to the box of talking about something cute, and it's almost like a maybe is it forbidden to talk about or to pursue beautiful buildings? Should they be just cool architecture instead? Let's see. Tuomo, any surprises in your track?
I cannot say that any real big surprise, but Helena started with a statement from 2,000 years ago. I started with 10 years ago. I mean, I couldn't imagine that 10 years ago all of us in the room would have agreed that we need a change in forest sector. And today I didn't hear any voice saying that, yes, everything is okay and we can continue as such. So maybe that's the kind of like a surprise still for me, that also in this sector, everybody understands that we have to see transformative change also in this sector.
Thank you very much. And now it's time. Helena, you still have a comment?
I need to say the last word in our panel was hope. And we were very happy to hear that.
That's a good word to close our talk here. Thank you very much, Veronica, Helena, Tuomo, and thanks to the audience for taking active part in the panel discussions. And now a couple of announcements, and then we will be going towards the end of this session. So I thought that maybe you would be interested in knowing that what's ahead in terms of the New European Bauhaus and some related topics. So here we go. I'd just like to draw your attention here. There is the call for the New European Bauhaus Prize for the year 2023. The call is open from the 6th of December until the end of January next year. And in the address prizes.neweuropeanbauhaus.eu, you will find more information. So be sure that you check this, and if you know any good proposals for this, do not hesitate. Then another thing that might be of interest of the audience today is that there is an inspiring challenge. It's called Built by Nature Challenge from Forest to Frame. And this challenge also is open until the 20th of January. You can check from the Built by Nature's website for more information on this. So it's also about the use of wood in sustainable construction and architecture. And a third announcement about the forthcoming events is something that Minister Antti Kurvinen referred to in his speech. Next week in Brussels, there is an event called Beyond the Biobubble, Solutions for a Circular Forest Bioeconomy on the 30th of November. So should you be around, please take this opportunity to participate. But now, and then a final announcement for those people who are enjoying this session here on site. There will be bus transfers out of the woods so that you don't need to start wandering at 3 p.m. local time and 5 p.m. local time. So 2 rounds at 3 and at 5 local time, leaving from the parking lot. And now let's start our journey out of the woods. And I'd like to do that by actually talking about the surroundings where we are today. We have heard a very inspirational speeches, and maybe you have noticed that some of the aspects of this building that were referred to in many of these speeches. Some of you have maybe also looked inside and noticed that we are at the border of a national park. And therefore, I think it would be good time to hear from Metsähallitus, who is the organization who is using and managing and protecting the state-owned forests and water areas and wetlands. So we do have a director for Parks and Wildlife from Metsähallitus, Mr. Henrik Jansson here. So, Mr. Jansson, would you please give us a word of greeting?
Thank you, dear guests to Haltia, colleagues and friends. At Metsähallitus, we are really delighted and actually very proud that we can then provide this site and Haltia to these interesting and very innovative discussions for today. The President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, said in her speech that we can be a small part of the global ecosystem, but we can also be a big part of the solution if we do it right. I think those were really inspiring words. And in Metsähallitus and Haltia, we actually want to be part of the solution by, of course, we are managing 1/3 of Finland, so we have also quite a lot of work to do in that. But the building you are in now is a good example. Haltia was built in 2013 and offers today an immersive experience of the Finnish nature and wilderness through its wooden architecture. And Haltia won actually the award for sustainable development at the highly esteemed European Museum of the Year award in 2015, which has shown that we have maybe succeeded in building a very sustainable and example of wooden architecture. And we have actually just renewed the strategy of Haltia. And in that strategy, we are aiming at creating a platform, a safe and good platform to discuss topical discussions on biodiversity, natural resources use, discussions that can be today difficult and there are many opinions, but we want to make a safe and confident platform for this. And I think in that sense, we've quite raised the bar quite high by starting our new strategy period with this session. And I actually am wondering how can we raise the bar next, because we have already started in such a good way. And that's have been really nice to follow today, these discussions. We have had a lot of topics on circular economy, forestry, building architecture, but maybe I could mention some immaterial values that we haven't touched so much today. We know when we manage the national parks in Finland, for example, that when we have 9 million visits to these national parks and protected areas recreational areas during the year, they give a lot of value to both the people and the local societies. They leave about 450 million euros to local economies the visitors. And the visitors themselves, they feel that they get a lot of health benefits, and it's estimated to 850 million per year. These are quite big numbers also that shouldn't be forgotten in these discussions when we are talking. And we are talking only about Finland and the protected areas, even when we would be talking about the whole of Finland, going out in your forest and going out in the architecture, on culture, in their neighborhood, that would be a much bigger number than this one. And don't mentioning on a European scale. So I just want to say a great and big thank you from us in Metsähallitus. It has been a great delight for us to follow the discussion. And as I said, according to our new strategy, you are most welcome back. So when you are thinking about having your next meeting or next conference, don't forget us. Haltia is here for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henrik Jansson. I'm sure that this place has been a pleasant venue, and I would like to remind all the on-site audience that please take the opportunity also to check the exhibitions that are still in some of the rooms of this museum if you have time. But now, let us wrap up this session. As said, for the on-site audience, buses will be leaving at 3 and at 5. And to our on-site audience as well, after this session, there is going to be a coffee break. I'm sure that at online office audiences, you are having your coffee breaks as well in your offices and homes. And then here at this venue, when the cameras have been shut, we will continue with networking, and there is a discussion about how to take the necessary steps forward towards the Bauhaus academy participation, and this is an opportunity that everybody will be invited in the coming months, also from the online audience and from the European Bauhaus community. But to those of you who are following us online, I would like to suggest that after you have closed this stream and after you have closed your computer, take a moment and close your eyes and take a deep breath and reflect the contents of today, and think about what sort of things you could do next year to build your own skills so that you can be part of this sustainability transition that we so desperately need. I think we are all agents of change in that respect. And with these words, I very much thank the online audience and the on-site audience. Let's take a break now here on site, and we will continue at 3 p.m. here. And to everybody out there, the New European Bauhaus community, our adventure into the woods will be continued. Thank you.